And we are here. Welcome to the Liberty First Foundation's Roundtable. This week, we've had quite an exciting week. Honestly, it's nothing that any of us really didn't expect to happen, but it's still been a very active week. And with that, we are going to have quite the discussion tonight. This week, we found out that the Supreme Court overturned New York's requirement to show proof or cause for obtaining a carry permit. We also saw that Roe v. Wade was overturned by the court, which we kind of knew that was coming. But one other thing is a Senate bill that was introduced this week and was put in for discussion 2 days later was passed through the Senate and today was passed the House. That is actually going to infringe on our rights and sets up a national red flag law. That is actually quite disturbing because we've had a lot of discussions about red flag laws and other legislation that's being pushed by the Congress, particularly by the House, and we kind of had some ongoing discussions. This bill kind of caught us by surprise with how fast it came about.
Yeah.
And then we got Frank. We got Frank on location in Grinnell, Iowa, at the Brownell Show.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm coming to you from Brownell's world headquarters in Grinnell, Iowa, where I am attending GunCon 2020.
There you go.
With that, I would also like to welcome Michael Vasquez to the show. Michael Vasquez has his own podcast and weekly show that you can catch on Sundays called No Sound Bites Allowed. You often see him with us at time to time. He's been with us on every show as we discuss the constitutionality of some of the measures that are put forth by our government. So that I'm going to go ahead and start the show. Michael, why don't you go ahead and just Frank, why don't you give us an update from Brownells? Let's start there.
All right. Well, GunCon is a gathering of gun manufacturers and content creators like what we do, and it brings together the manufacturers and the publicity community. You know, the people who show off all this stuff, and we've made a lot of really great contacts. We've had an opportunity to meet with a lot of good people down here from multiple gun companies and accessory companies. I probably got about 8 hours worth of footage today alone, and tomorrow is GunCon itself, which is the panel where if you go onto YouTube and you look up the Gun Collective is an assortment of some of the best and most well-known gun channels that are out there, all Second Amendment directed channels. All the members of GunCon are going to be on one panel tomorrow for a 3-hour Q&A where all of us content creators and manufacturers all get to ask them questions about, you know, what they think are the best things to happen to the market, the challenges that we face in the market, and of course, all things Second Amendment.
What time is that going to be at, Frank?
The panel tomorrow starts at 4 p.m. I'm going to try my best to live stream from here.
I will set up the live stream. I will have the live stream set up. And so you'll just be able to attach to us through this live stream.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try and get here early tomorrow because during the day tomorrow is mostly a lot of meet and greet. It's for everybody here to build relationships in the industry, and then the panel starts at around 4 p.m. Okay. So we'll see what happens. It looks right now as though we've got a couple of collaborative efforts between the Range Report and some of the bigger gun channels that are out here. So we've done pretty good so far. And I got to shoot a lot of guns today. So
awesome. Well, welcome, Alex.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. So you're just here with audio tonight, or you gonna be able to do video?
I'm gonna try to do video while you guys are talking. I'll chime in when I can.
Okay, sounds great.
So it sounds like it's a great time down there, Frank. Let me ask, what kind of guns have you fired so far?
Oh, everything from Volquartzens to H and Heckler and Koch. And yes, I fired a bunch of high points today. Did a little bit of machine gun shooting. A lot of stuff. You know, an event like this doesn't necessarily draw some of the most well-known gun manufacturers. These are a lot of the smaller companies or companies that have extremely specialized devices. And they bring them in here because they need to get a little bit of airtime.
Well, let me ask you.
I mean,
Awesome.
Yeah, everybody knows Colt, Smith & Wesson, Glock, and stuff like that. But you have a lot of lesser-known companies that come out here, and they make themselves accessible to the media because they have really good products that a lot of people just aren't familiar with. Matter of fact, I got a Bull Armory is importing a new gun from Turkey, and I compete with one gun. I'm not going to mention a name because they. I got a phone call coming in. Let me have to decline that real quick.
Yeah, you said
The gun they have coming in from Turkey is probably one of the nicest guns I have ever fired. One of the best triggers, super accurate, and they're sending one out to me Monday.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are any of the ammo companies there, large or small?
There are a couple of ammunition companies here, and you know, ammunition is scarce. But hold on, I'm getting text messages. Listen, guys, I'm gonna have to check back with you guys tomorrow. I'll give you a better update at another time. Right now, I'm getting phone calls here, and I'm getting waved over by people over here. So
Okay. Thank you for
so
the
until
update,
next
Frank.
time, you guys be safe and shoot straight.
We'll see you tomorrow with that panel.
All right.
Stay safe.
So that was
Okay,
a live
excuse me,
update.
gents. I got to let my dog out.
No problem. So that was just a live update from Frank Johnson, who's a member of the Liberty First Foundation, live from the Gun Con of 2022. And obviously, that's something you just don't get to see anywhere. You don't get to hear about that anywhere. Our other member, Jeremy Bishop, tonight is over at the Wasatch Shooting Range, which is a lot of fun. So he's having fun for a Friday night. Mind you, I enjoy talking to you guys. We all enjoy talking to you. But if I could talk to you and shoot, I'd be even happier.
Yep.
But that's just my opinion.
Well, welcome, Alex. And I see you got your video straightened out. So awesome. Great to see you.
Hey, good to see you again. How you guys
Been
been?
on.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy lately.
Yeah, and this last week has been even busier. I think you were mentioning before, just for people who aren't familiar with myself, Michael Voss, I do the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast. I'm a political commentator for the last 15 years, and I focus on First Amendment, Second Amendment issues and international, and have been seriously following and updating people, going around to universities and other events, speaking on the red flag laws, not just in New York State, but across the country. It is underreported, believe it or not, what the consequences of that are. And I advise people to check out some of the stuff I've done since 2018 on that. But let's talk about this week.
This week been crazy. Supreme Court's been extremely busy, and it has actually been very controversial, to say the least.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, Mike.
No, it shouldn't be. I totally agree with you. So earlier in the week, the Supreme Court, in the case of the New York State Pistol and Rifle Association against, I'm trying to remember his last name. Basically, it's the head of the state police, New York State Police.
Mhm.
In that case, the Supreme Court essentially said that New York State is not allowed to require people to prove cause for why they need to apply for a handgun permit. or a carry permit. Essentially, you no longer have to prove that you have a need to exercise your Second Amendment rights, is what the Supreme Court handed down this week. Governor Hochul was really outraged by this ruling, and they went into emergency session last night over this, and they are actually making a list of sensitive locations where you are not allowed to carry a firearm.
In other words, gun-free zones, and we know how well that works.
Exactly. And it's going to be interesting to find out exactly how and what they determine is a sensitive area, and they are going to determine we are going to be allowed to exercise our rights.
I can guess already. It's going to be anywhere that children are present, which means schools, malls, hospitals, any public gathering place that would allow children to be present. They're probably going to go after parks. They're going to go after businesses, private businesses.
Any place serves any type of alcohol.
Anything that has alcohol, stores.
Why not sidewalks and the road, period?
Because they can't touch those. Those are public access. Since everyone has access to it, they can't touch that. But they can go to private businesses, malls, schools.
What about privately owned vehicles?
They can't go after that.
Okay.
That's personal property. It's individualized.
Well, I know, but Mike can attest to the fact that they can justify just about anything with their backwards logic.
Oh yeah, they try.
It's ridiculous. And by the way, the name of the case, in case anyone wants, and I do advise, look up the case. It is New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated versus Bruin, Bruen, Superintendent of New York State Police. So New York State Rifle and Pistol versus Bruin, Bruen, and you should be able to find it. I have a copy of it that I've been reading through, and I strongly advise skip everything up to the dissent, because that's the part that's important, which starts on page 90.
It's a 135-page opinion.
Yeah, and the dissent by Justice Breyer starts on page 84. 84. The pages 85, 96, 99, I think, contain critical elements because it tells you exactly what the left is looking at. This has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with the law. This is about the personal feelings of Sotomayor, Justice Breyer, and Justice Kagan. And he makes it very clear. The first 6 pages of his dissent is about his personal feeling and badly quoted data from left-leaning websites. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it's really telling, too, how a lot of the anti-gun politicians have been addressing this as, this is not what America wants. Going against America right after, on the heels of a deadly catastrophe in Uvalde.
But
why does the Supreme Court need to be concerned with that? They need to be looking at what the law is and what the laws are, how the Constitution applies. Okay, regardless of what events are occurring, they need to be focused on whether or not these actions by New York State were authorized or were authorized by the Constitution, or whether or not they're allowed by the Constitution. Now, that's the only thing that should matter to the Supreme Court.
That's the only thing that should matter, but and this is why I brought up the dissent so people can see this. Alex, have you read it yet?
Not the full dissent. No, just heard people talk about what it speaks.
Okay. I want to show everyone just a couple of quick lines on this. So, again, this starts on page 84, the dissent, Justice Breyer, Sotomayor, Kagan. The very first sentence is in 2020, 45,222 Americans were killed by firearms. That, now, while that may be sad, has nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with legal ownership of a firearm. It has nothing to do with whether or not you have a right or whether the government has a right above you. Nothing to do with it. He's already made it very clear. This is personal. This is his personal feeling because it has nothing to do with the law. This is an irrelevant fact. And he also leaves out the fact that this is half of those individuals were suicides. Beyond that, let's go further. The very next page, this is page 85. And on page 85, he says in the first paragraph, the court wrongly limits its analysis to focus nearly exclusively on history, which means context. How was it written? What did it mean? How does that represent our rights? Breyer wants to throw that out. The court refuses to consider the government interests that justify a challenge gun regulation, regardless of how compelling those interests may be. He is saying in that sentence, this is legalese, but I want people to understand it. He is saying in that sentence that the government has a right that is stronger than your own. The government can micromanage your life. The government is above you. This flies in the face of the Constitution. This flies in the face of the amendments, and he is wrong. Categorically, historically, empirically, and semantically wrong. No matter what.
There's no place in the Constitution that it grants Congress the authority in a compelling government interest.
Right. And that's why that line is so important for people to understand. He is saying, and I know it's legal speak, I'm trying to decipher it for you. He is saying that because the government is saying they're going to protect you, that the government is going to take care of you, you no longer have a right. Because the government said, we'll take care of it, you no longer have a right. Imagine if they said that about healthcare, about the food you eat, about who you date, who you get to have sex with, who you get to have marry, about any aspect of your life that they say, well, the government will take care of it. You no longer get to choose anything. People would lose their minds. Let me go further. And it's page 99. Where is it? 90. I just want to make sure I get this right. Here, yeah, it's page 99. 96. Nope, 99. And here it is. Shall issue. Where is it? Keep going, guys. I'm going to find it, and I'll tell you exactly where it is.
Well, one thing that on this is in the past they have tried to upheld that, or it has been upheld that a compelling government interest can be grounds enough for certain legislation. Well, one of the things that I really have an issue with is that compelling government issue or compelling government interest still needs to be within the powers defined and enumerated under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It doesn't mean that Congress can just randomly or routinely expand their powers because they're claiming a compelling government interest. Okay, we have in the Constitution, we have a means by which Congress can legitimately expand its powers, but it requires the consent of the states by 3/4 of the states. Otherwise, the federal government does not have the authority.
But they're creating the authority. And here's and I got my pages. There's several pages that are important. On page 90, as you can see, as I highlighted here, from the Breyer dissent, he says, these are just, he's gone through 6 pages of misquoting facts about guns, gun suicides, gun murders. He doesn't mention gangs at all, any gang violence. He mentions once or twice that there are suicides, and he blows past that. He misrepresents the number of mass shootings that have occurred in the country in the last year. Fine. But then he goes on to say, these are just some examples of the dangers that firearms pose. There is, of course, another side to the story. I am not simply saying that guns are bad. Really? Because he's talking about Justice Alito, who asks him, why is he saying that guns are bad? Why do you spend the beginning of your entire conversation about guns are bad? Another Supreme Court justice had to question him on that. 6 pages of saying guns are bad. That is your personal opinion, Justice Breyer. That opinion is no better, no more important, has no more authority than the opinion of anyone in America. A Supreme Court justice does not have a better opinion about something than anyone. They may have a better legal understanding, but their feelings are just feelings, and they don't count in courtrooms. And he's telling you, he's been spending 6 pages of a dissent to tell you guns are bad. He is trying to manipulate your emotions to come to a conclusion that is in favor with him. He is spreading fear because, quite honestly, firearms are not dangerous. Let me make this very clear. This is how wrong he is. Okay? This is a deadly weapon. People have been killed with pens and pencils for centuries. This is a lighter. This is a dangerous weapon. It is and by New York definition of red flag laws, this is a dangerous implement. It has been used to commit arsons, to destroy property, and to kill people. This is a dangerous implement which would allow someone to use a red flag action against you. A gun is no different. The fact is that those are just tools. The danger is in a crazed, criminal, deranged, and or demonic individual that uses these tools to commit arson, to stab someone with a pen, or to fire a firearm. And that intent, that feeling of an individual has nothing to do with your rights. You have a right to be able to have a lighter. You have a right. You have the ability, I should say, you have the ability to light a fire. Whether I light a fire to create an arson or to heat my food is up to me. The government doesn't get to make that choice.
Here's one thing I like saying, that they say the First Amendment's not absolute, in the fact that you can't go into a crowded theater and yell fire. Okay, I have to challenge that, because you can actually go into a theater and yell fire. That is your
fire.
right. However, if it causes harm to another person, then you are held accountable.
I believe the decision was that if it is a materially false statement that you know at the time of utterance is false, then that is not protected by the First Amendment. In other words, if I am in a crowded theater, I'm in wherever I might be, and I scream fire, or you could scream rape, or you could scream mugger, doesn't make a difference. If I know that that is a lie, that it is factually not correct, and it causes people to be harmed, that isn't free speech, and I get to go to jail. As an example,
here's the thing. You're not actually being charged for your statement.
No.
You're being charged for the repercussions of your statement.
Right. It's the consequence. Just like Amber
Okay.
Heard.
So in other words, you can't use freedom of speech as a defense for your charges that you're being held accountable for.
Yeah, in real world, something that everyone follows, people who aren't political, Johnny Depp.
Mhm.
Amber Heard says, well, it was my freedom of speech to write this article that defamed Johnny Depp. Well, no. And as she went through the court case, it's very clear. Your freedom of speech does not allow you to defame someone. That is not a defense. You are still liable to the consequences of that, the criminal action that she took. So this is the exact same thing. When we look
So
at
I think Frank's trying to chime in.
Yeah, it's where I'm at. It's a little hard for me to hear everything that's being said. So every now and then you might not see me because I'm holding the phone up to my ear. But Mike, in Breyer's dissent in the decision, where he lists all those facts and figures about the debts and this, that, and everything else, did he cite any of the sources as to where he got those figures from?
Some of them, yes. And most of them were left-leaning sources that have a predilection. They have a preference towards overinflating the numbers. But even if they're overinflating the numbers and he cited those sources,
if he's doing that, he's purposefully trying to twist the numbers to fit an emotional aspect of his dissent, rather than citing the actual statistics. Like the FBI will have their murder statistics, they'll have the statistics for suicide, they'll have the statistics for gang violence and all the rest of that. If he's not parsing those things out, and then on top of that also not saying, oh, by the way, guns are also good for this. I mean, how can the man stay? How is not anybody calling him to go take the cloak off, go sit down, because you're ridiculous at this point.
I kind of wonder, and I find it interesting that he's not using any government sources to justify. All.
I want to be clear. He does cite the CDC. He does not cite the FBI Crime in the USA report. He does not cite individual states like New York State, which has the gun-involved violence elimination report or similar reports. He's not breaking down the numbers and looking at, as an example, the separation of gang violence versus shootings in a year, which is a big difference. He doesn't do that.
All right. So by him formulating an opinion, by basically cherry picking the statistics that he wanted, he basically said, okay, here's my opinion. Now let me go find the numbers that match it.
Yes,
exactly.
That's exactly
what he did.
And
all right. So he's already basically expressed that he's predetermined what his decision was before he even heard the case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he goes through at one point and he starts listing not just this, he's listing several events like Newtown, and he goes into the Texas Elementary School, the Washington Post listing on that. 10 people killed in racially motivated shooting in Buffalo, of course. He's cherry picking the Orlando shooting. He's cherry picking certain events and leaving out any other events. Like he's not mentioning the Texas attempt to kill people in the synagogue, and assuming the church, that was stopped by individuals who also happened to be armed and were able to defend them. He's not mentioning any, or the mother who had to protect the 9-month pregnant wife who had to protect her kid and her husband from being pistol whipped. He doesn't mention that incident or several others.
I don't know. I think Breyer's got to go back and watch My Cousin Vinny one more time, because there's that one line that says verdict. Verdict means truth. That's where we get that. It's Latin. If this guy doesn't, if he can't write the truth in a dissent, how can we possibly trust that he's going to be able to come up with a right verdict on any case that they hear?
Yeah. One of his sources, just to give you, when I say that it's biased, one of his sources is everytown.org, which is a left-leaning, left-funded organization that has classically and is known for overinflating, where when they talk about school shootings, someone got mugged on the property of the school, and they count that as a school shooting. Someone brought a BB gun into school on Saturday, and they were caught with that BB gun on the football field. That was counted as a school shooting. So they count things that aren't actually real from Everytown, USA. It is highly, highly biased, and it is well known for that. So again, he's not talking about law, the Second Amendment. He's talking about his feelings. He's talking about his politics.
Well, then listen. Then maybe what we should all do collectively as people who are constitutionalists is write a letter of thanks to Judge Breyer for his letter of dissent, because it fully and totally exposes the thought process behind an anti-constitutionalist and how they view our country.
Mm-hmm.
It exposes exactly how they think. It's their thought process. And if anything else, at least it shows us a roadmap of how we can beat them in other cases in the future.
I think it absolutely does. It is insane. I have never seen a Supreme Court decision where they start off with their personal feelings and they justify it by using biased sources to try and mold an emotional response before they ever address the actual law and the actual question. Because the question is never, oh, will people misuse a car? Will people misuse a pen, a lighter? Who cares? That's an individual choice. What we're talking about is the inalienable right to defend yourself, your property, and your government.
Okay. I just went in and looked at the decision of McDonald v. Chicago. And Justice Breyer dissented on that as well.
Yes.
And he essentially did the same thing in his dissent there, in stating that if you just take this historic context instead of looking at the government's compelling interest, that that the opinion is wrong. Okay, and that's, I mean, honestly, the Constitution, the way it was written, and we've discussed this before on the show, is we have to look at the intent at the time it was ratified by the states. In other words, what did the states in 1791 and in 1896, when the Second Amendment and the 14th Amendments were ratified, what did they believe that those amendments said? Okay.
Hey,
what was
hey, real quick, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Say hi to Tim from the Military Arms Channel. We're doing our podcast. I had to get on there. Sorry, guys. I had to do that. I love that guy. I might do a few more of those while I'm here.
Okay. We're forewarned.
So essentially, that has been determined in other Supreme Court opinions, that we have to look at the context that of what the states believed the intent of those amendments were at the time that they were ratified.
The states were very clear when they ratified it. They accepted and agreed by definition that it is an inalienable right. It is an absolute right of the individual, of the American citizen, to defend themselves, their property, and their country at all costs. That is absolute. And Justice Breyer goes on to say that the difference between shall issue about the licenses, that 43 states have a shall issue, and that 7 states, which happen to be all Democratic strongholds, Hawaii, New York, California, I believe Maryland. The reason why, the rest of the justices said, well, those are outliers because there's only 7 of them, and they deny people the right to be able to have arms, as other states say they will you have the right, you will get a license unless there is an extreme circumstance, not a may issue, which New York has, in saying, well, if we want you to have one, you will get it, which is an infringement. And his answer is, well, you have to understand the context because they have big cities. This is literally what he says, that the reason why it's okay for New York and California and Hawaii to do this is because they have big populations. Guess what? Illinois, Texas, Florida, they have big populations. Atlanta is a big city, and yet they are shall issue.
Memphis is a big city.
His argument has no logic to it whatsoever. And he knows it, but he's trying to find a way to say, no. But again, his answer is the government's going to protect you, and you don't have to worry about it. And I do not believe that. Dan, we're going to get to your comment.
Yeah, we will, because we're going to go into an in-depth discussion too about the Senate bill that went on to and is now sitting on Biden's desk for his signature.
Actually, I believe it still has to go through the House one last time.
But it was passed by the House today.
Oh, sorry.
It was passed by the House today. It's waiting Biden's signature.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely going to get passed. And it falls in line with everything Biden wants to do. And I've looked into it a little bit, and the red flag laws are kind of a colloquialism. Can't pronounce that word.
Did you look at the Senate drafted bill?
Yes.
Okay.
But before we
the one that came out this week.
Before we get to that,
are we going to circle back to that?
No, we're going to go right to it. But
okay.
I just want to make sure. Yeah, right. Yes, I get that. The press secretary Psaki will circle back. One thing we have to understand. Remember, and I believe we spoke about it on the show, and I've done videos on it directly. Last year, the Ninth Circuit Court in October said that in the case Young versus Hawaii, that the American citizens do not have a right to protect themselves outside of your own home. That was a Ninth Circuit Court case. Because of the finding today, that is gone. It does not exist anymore. That means
it's nullified.
It is nullified, and it is an affirmation that you do have a right to protect yourself outside of your home, which was something that, again, the left were trying to take away from people. So this isn't just about New York. It has wide-reaching impacts. It affects what happened in the Ninth Circuit Court case and the nation. It's a big deal. But let's talk about red flag.
I did watch some of your videos that you posted. I also watched some of Governor Hochul's press announcement that was announcing these areas of where they were trying to ban guns.
All right, before you guys do that, I'm going to say goodnight because I got to get back over to this thing. I just wanted to say real quick, look how nice the Range Report mobile looked like.
Oh, yes.
Hold on a second.
Look at that, Frank.
Look at that.
That's good.
All right, guys, the second time tonight. Oh, okay, hold on. The Range Report mobile is fully lettered and got QR codes and all kinds of stuff. This is what I worked on for all that time while I had COVID. Hey,
came out nice.
Great job, Frank. Looks beautiful.
Hey, 1,200 miles. 1,200 miles I drove to come do this stuff. You can't say I'm not dedicated. Love you guys. Have a good night. Be safe.
You too,
Be safe, Frank.
This is Frank Big Guns Johnson signing off.
I thought he was Sugar Daddy Johnson.
Hey, he changed.
Yeah. He has conflicts to deal with. Yeah, the red flag. You ready to go into red flag laws?
I'm always ready to talk about that.
All right. So the red flag laws, that's the media term. What they're the logic they're using, the term they're using is crisis intervention, and as I understand it, they are mutually exclusive from any type of constitutional carry. I'm in Ohio. Ohio just passed constitutional carry, took effect this month. June 12th. Since then, there haven't been shootings on the streets. People haven't been going nuts or anything like that. It's been pretty. Actually, the roads have been a lot calmer this week. But what these laws will allow the police to do is to seize your property and deprive you of liberty without due process.
More
Now,
than
it's not an. It's more than that, but those are kind of the big things that folks are talking about. It's not a national red flag law or anything like that, but what it does do is incentivize states by providing a lot of funding for these mental health crisis intervention type actions.
To be clear, so that people know what you're talking about, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was introduced to the Senate. One of the stipulations that it has in there is that it is going to spend $1.4 trillion of new spending, new money, which is going to depress the economy. It's going to add to the inflation, just like last year's new money being printed created the inflation we're having today. So it will make the economy even worse, a deeper recession, because they're going to pay states to create red flag laws, and all states, once they have a red flag law, including the 18 that have it plus Washington, D.C., they will pay states to put American citizens on a list to have red flag actions against them. And that means they're going to pay them per person. It's a monetary incentive.
So it's incentivizing people to red flag,
yes,
or states to red flag people.
Yes, when we're talking about $1.4 trillion of buying people to be on that list and to stay on that list.
Yeah, and essentially, just like they incentivized classifying people that died of COVID.
Yeah.
You're talking about dying with COVID, as far as dying from COVID distinction that they finally admitted that they hadn't been using for the past 2.5 years, only a couple months ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, Voss, have you seen the close friend or relationship clause?
Always.
In there?
Seen them all.
Yeah.
I've seen it in every single state.
Have you seen any type of limitation on that clause? I mean, if I find a chick on Tinder that I make angry, can she file a police report and say that is that a close enough relationship? Where does that start and where does that end?
It is an ill-defined term. Yes, they can. If they have been in your residence over the space of a year, so within the last year, if that person has been at your residence on a regular basis, they qualify. Your ex-roommate, an ex-girlfriend, an ex-wife, any significant person in your life, yes.
Do they define what regular means? Is it once? Is it once a month? Oh, of course not. I love vagaries.
No, of course they're not going to define it. If they've defined it, then I mean, why would they define it? That just ties their hands.
Yes. And I know what the answer is from the left. And they say, well, we protect people from grudges. And matter of fact, Politico put out, they retweeted a link to another organization, Pointer, that says that for the media, don't believe the hype that you can't use red flag laws to commit grudges. Yes, you can. And in fact, that happened in 2019 to a man in Oneida who then subsequently, because of the negative impact to his business and his personal life in social media and the news, committed suicide. Yes, that is real. You can do this. Their answer is, but there is a clause that says that that if you make a false claim, you have a penalty, which is not true in every state. Let's start there. Second thing, in the states that do have the clause, it says if you believe at the time that you make the red flag law that you are correct, that this is a true statement, then you're fine. You have to.
How are you going to prove that they didn't believe that?
Yeah, you have to prove that they knowingly were aware that it was completely false and they had no belief that this person wasn't a danger to themselves and their community, which is almost impossible to prove. Mm-hmm. So therefore, and this is why, to my knowledge, since 1999, I am not aware of anyone who has ever been charged with making a false red flag law. In addition, they say, well, the other protection is that a judge will look over the evidence and they won't put out a red flag law. In my research, including FOIAs to Connecticut and Indiana, and speaking with representatives of the New York State legislature, as well as many other states, and putting out FOIAs, I have yet to find a single state or a single case where a red flag law was denied by a judge. Now, I can't say that they haven't done that, but there is no evidence that I am aware of anywhere in the nation since 1999 where a judge has denied a red flag because they are incentivized to always do it, because this could be the one time that person then turns around and goes out. Kind of like with what happened in Buffalo, which didn't go to a judge, but the Buffalo shooter was evaluated. He lied. He was released, and then he continued with his plan. So that means there is a liability issue. Judges always sign red flags because of that liability issue every single time. Again, this is a rodeo set up because red flags, by definition, when someone goes in, and again, people don't know this, I want to try and make it clear for people. When someone says, literally in New York State, this is confirmed, I have on the record, members of the New York State legislature, members of the Assembly and the Senate have confirmed this, and I have published this confirmation. If a temporary badminton coach, a part-time temporary badminton coach at a school sees that child is tired or upset, and they know that the parent has said something, say on Twitter, Facebook, social media, in a conversation saying that they own a firearm, that temporary part-time badminton coach can go forward with a red flag action against those parents. It gets worse. The judge will say, what is your proof? If you have bought a dangerous implement, which would mean any item that has ever been used to cause harm and to kill another human being in the history of mankind, that counts. And if you've bought something of that nature within the last 6 months, that is justification for the red flag action. They will then come to your home. All of this is happening behind closed doors. You are not notified. The judge will then issue a warrant. The police will show up at your home somewhere between 4 to 8 a.m. They usually pick 5 to 6 a.m. to do so because you're bleary, you're asleep, you don't know what's going on. They surprise people. It's meant to be a safety tactic, but it's an intimidation tactic. And they will take your property and your children, because if the home is so dangerous that they have to take away your Second Amendment rights, take away your property, it's too dangerous for that child to be there. So they will take your child, they will take your property, and now at that moment is the first moment in all 18 states in Washington, D.C., the first moment that you get to have your due process, because they will give you a ticket saying, hey, you can go to court somewhere in the next 2 weeks, usually a 2-week period, to go into court to start the process to argue your case.
Now,
Mike,
just to let you know, the bill that we're talking about is Senate Bill S2938. That's 2938.
so Mike Voss, would it be safe to say that the state is using barely rational basis for depriving you of liberty and property, but using strict scrutiny to return it?
They have extremely strict scrutiny to return it. The process, as I've talked to lawyers across the country and to legislative members, it can take up to a year to get your property back. It can take also a year to get your children back. It will cost, on average, according to attorneys I've spoken to across the country, somewhere between $11,000 to $25,000 per case to be able to to get your property and or your children back. And this is assuming that you even knew to have a lawyer on retainer and the money set aside to be able to do that. Remember, you have to now take time out of your schedule to go to the courts, to fight, to get an attorney, to pay for this attorney, to pay for the court fees. And you don't know when your case is going to come up. And this is meanwhile, in the newspaper, as always, every time a red flag action happens locally, you're going to be targeted, sometimes nationally. You're going to be targeted. You're going to be excluded from social media because you are now a dangerous person. So social media will unperson you. You are at that moment restricted from being in certain places, like you can't go to schools because you are a danger to children. So your kids, if you even want to visit them at a school, you can't go because you're too dangerous to be on that school property. Do you see how this starts catapulting and starts taking away people's lives and livelihoods? Your business, if you have a business that you own or even work for, and people know that because you mentioned it, many businesses say, please put down on your Facebook, your Twitter, that you work for us. Well, now they're associated with someone who has a red flag action who's dangerous. You just have a danger. Now that business has to decide, do they want to continue to employ you? Are they going to denounce you? Are they going to shun and get away from you, distance themselves from you? This is the impact that they're talking about, and they are going to pay $1.4 trillion to do this to people because every state wants money. New York State is $8 billion in the hole. Do you think they have an incentive to try and get part of that 1.4 trillion by increasing the number of people who have red flag actions, which as of February was 1,409 people since they passed the law in 2019? Do you think they might want to double that so that they can get a bigger piece of the pie to pay off that $8 billion debt?
I mean, you have a really, you have a really. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just looking at this bill.
Yeah.
Did you know that this was originally
Piecemeal
introduced into the Senate as an environment and public works bill?
Yes. And it's a piecemeal bill. There are several pieces of this bill that come from other bills that could never get passed by themselves. They've been waiting for an opportunity. There is a section of the bill, which is towards the bottom, I think it's part 5, which is the Safer Schools Act. Now, this is something that has already been pre-existing. There is an additional $1 billion, separate of the 1.4 trillion that's going to just the red flags. They're going to spend an additional $1 billion, $200 million of that to be spent this year on the Safer Schools and Communities Act. This is to harden our schools, to make our schools safe for kids, which obviously, looking at Uvalde, it failed. It's a failure of a program. But let's go with that. This program, let me mention, this program has currently $382 million worth of funding. They have spent this year, to date, $40 million. It is using 11% of all the funds that it has available. They are adding 200 million to that. This is less than, this thing is 90% ineffective, and it is overfunded by about 110%. And by the way, every year this has existed, it has never gotten better than 52% of all the funding being spent. This is somewhere, it's a slush fund. They drop money in there that we're paying for in our taxes that are coming out of us, out our pockets in inflation, and they are dumping money in there with absolutely no positive impact.
No.
Again, no one in the media tells you that, but I follow.
Well, it's got a clause in here, community-oriented policing services for an additional amount for community-oriented policing services, $100 million to remain available until expended for competitive grants to be administered by the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office for purposes authorized under the Stop School Violence Act of 2018. Title 5 of Division S of Public Law 115 TAC 141, provided that 20 million to remain available until expended shall be made available for fiscal year 2022. 20 million to remain available until expended shall be made available for fiscal year 2023. 20 million to remain available until expended shall be made available for fiscal year 2024. Essentially, 20 million for the next 5 years, each year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, $100 million. This thing is almost a $2 trillion bill of wasted money. And Mike, if you put this up on the screen, I just want to show people, because no one's looked at this. I've read the whole thing. It's incredible. Go ahead. If you can put up.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this with you. So this is from the government as put forward by page 76. Okay. This is the bill. This is what they originally put out. This is what they voted on. This is the act. Okay. And we're going to go to page 76 just so people can see exactly what I'm talking about. Page 76, so you can see this for yourself. Safe schools and citizenship education. $1,100,000,000,000 in fiscal year 2022. $200 million. Okay, you say to me, Mike, well, prove what you were saying. This is the Safe Schools and Citizenship Education. This is fiscal year 2022 at a snapshot. Here's the spending over time. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. You see the dark area? That's how much money they actually spent. That's how much money they got in the light. 2022, $40 million, $382 million that they have. We just added 200 million to it. It is less than 11%. When I say that this is all public information, New York Times, Washington Post, CNBC, CNN, they all have this information. They could have told you this. The senators could have told you this. No one wants you to know the truth. This is a waste of money. It is ineffective. It is inefficient. It will not protect our kids. It will not protect Americans. And they are going to spend like hell, destroying our economy. And you are going to be abused. This is meant to abuse you.
Not just, I mean, it seems also to put a lot of incentive for school boards as well.
Yep.
It makes school board elections far more competitive, and it provides a monetary incentive for people to jump on there. And it's not what we're looking at here is an outward attack on a Second Amendment. What about the back channel ones? Have you heard about what's going on with the Lake City plant in Missouri via Winchester?
Yes, I already know.
Yep.
Go ahead, tell people. I know about it.
You probably know far more about than I do, but basically, we buy the Winchester provides the 5.56 millimeter ammunition for the U.S. military via a government-owned but civilian ran manufacturing facility in Lake City, Missouri. The deal is they provide all the ammunition to the military, and their excess they can sell to the civilian market. That public-private partnership, what it does is allow Winchester or this particular facility to ramp up production immediately if the United States gets into a conflict and needs ammunition. From a manufacturing standpoint and an industry standpoint, this will limit that production. Limiting this company's ability to sell to the commercial market will force them to lay off workers, sell machines, reduce capacity. Not only will it prevent 5.56 millimeter ammunition, by the way, the most popular rifle ammunition in the country to be sold, if we get into a conflict, which it seems we're about this close on a couple of different fronts from getting into, we will not have the stockpile available. So while trying to limit the civilian population's ability to have ammunition, it's going to neuter itself if it comes into an actual conflict. And we're already dealing with an ammunition shortage.
Well,
Please go
one
ahead.
thing I would mention about that, Alex, because I have looked into it. While it has been reiterated by the NRA, that is the only major source, incredibly known source, that has reiterated this. This is initially a reporting from a smaller pro Second Amendment organization, and I'm not doubting their credibility. They're not internationally known, and I personally have not investigated them, but they say they have contact with sources at the plant. What I can say is that as the story has been going around, as the NRA has spoken about it, and people have seen it, not one government official has denied its truth. No one has said it is not the veracity has not been disproved. They're avoiding the subject altogether. So for people who go, well, that's just the NRA, the United States government has not said this is incorrect. This is, remember, this is the same way that when they went after Project Veritas, they didn't say that the diary wasn't real. They just said they had to take it. They just confirmed that they had to have it because it was someone's property, but they wouldn't say that it's a real journal. The laptop, as an example, you heard New York Times. Well, we haven't proven that it's actually true, but we're not going to actually bother to actually verify that it's not true. 2.5 years later, yeah, we know the fact. So I want people to understand the gimmick of the government is they won't deny it, nor will they approve it. They'll just let it go until people forget.
Yeah, they'll just memory hole it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to make that clear for people, because someone will say, well, that's not true. That's just conspiracy. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Well, this bill has had, let me see, 33 amendments to it.
Yeah.
And the amendments are literally a laundry list of things. There's changes in how short-barreled rifles are defined. I mean, just all kinds of stuff.
You know what they don't amend? You know what they don't amend? The National Firearms Act of 1934 that allows 741,000 Americans to own 741,000 assault weapons, literal assault weapons, machine guns right now. It doesn't stop 3.3 million Americans who have the authorization and in fact have rocket launchers, flamethrowers, tanks, F-14s, and bombs, mines. This is legal. 3.3 million people own that. And they're telling us, oh, but we've got to get rid of the rifles. By the way, on the list of Delaware just banned, I don't know if you noticed that, Delaware just banned a bunch of guns. They put out a gun ban. Do you know what's one of the things on the gun ban? The Ruger Mini 14 folding stock model, but the Woodstock model, which is the exact same gun, except one has a wooden stock, one has a folding stock. The wooden stock model is legal. The folding stock isn't.
So it just shows how absolutely naive and incompetent these people are when it comes to firearms. I mean, a folding stock is harder to achieve a cheek to stock weld compared to a wooden stock. I mean, and which is critical for actually having a good sight picture and having rounds enter the same target at distance. So, I mean, it's just one little example of how naive these people are.
I want to show you.
The wooden one doesn't look like a Hollywood movie.
It's not as scary as what you're saying.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger would use it.
Here. Here's one of the amendments. Hold on a second. Let me get pulled up here.
Sure. As you bring that up, by the way, folks, I have invited every member of government from New York State's legislature all the way up to the federal level, any any elected official that would like to discuss red flag laws with me, and I have given them, many of them, the documents where I am quoting right now for you, as I have spoken to colleges and talking about this. If any elected official ever wants to dispute what I have to say, I will be happy to sit down anytime, anywhere, and have this discussion with them. I've been saying that since 2018. Not one will accept.
Come on, Mike. That's not fair. You know these people, Republicans, Democrats, they do not have the intellectual or moral justification to try to push these laws. That's why they'll never talk to you.
You know,
but this is one of the amendments put in on this bill. This act may be cited as fixing our regulatory mayhem, upsetting Little Americans Act, or the Formula Act. Section 2, duty-free treatment of imports of infant formula. In general, during the 90-day period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act, infant formula shall enter the United States free of duty and free of quantitative limitation. Infant formula defined in this section. The term infant formula has meaning given that term in Section 201Z of the Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act, 21 U.S. Code 321Z.
So you're talking about Operation Formula Flight or Formula Freedom?
Yep.
I can't remember what it was.
Is one of the amendments in this act.
Yeah.
So we're still dealing with baby formula shortages. Do you want to go down this route?
They already told you there's going to be a food shortage starting in October when we see everything switch to the winter gas prices, which is going to be after the peak of the summer gas price increase. So, yeah.
So, I have contacts in Great Britain and Europe, and I've seen a pattern of what happens, especially in Great Britain, but Europe, as far as inflation, ends up hitting us as well. And in Great Britain specifically, from starting in April, they were seeing a 100% increase in their monthly petrol costs per month.
Yeah.
Compared to the previous month.
Yes.
People out there are going to start freezing to death. And I mean, Mike, I don't know where you guys are, but I'm in Ohio. I know, Mike Marshall.
It's going to be cold here.
It's going to be freaking cold.
Yeah, it's always cold.
Now, I mean, there's 100 different routes we can go down policy-wise of how this administration has, I don't want to get us flagged, but screwed its population this winter between closing of the Keystone Pipeline contracts and removing new drilling location contracts, plus COVID restrictions shutting down fracking sites. That equipment's been leased somewhere else. I mean, we just can't get that back. There is no short-term solution to the absolute policy failures of this administration right now. And you can't blame this on Trump, because Biden's been in for going on a year now, and it's only getting worse. Year and a half. If he was if we're dealing with Trump's inflation, then Biden's policies should have fixed it. We're dealing with right now a kind of sliding scale of failures of policies, and the impacts are, I mean, they're a lagging factor. The diesel prices, when they skyrocket, it'll affect food prices in 60 to 90 days. It won't be right away, but we're going to continue to see incremental uptick in these things.
They already have, and they are already affecting all of the truckers, because we're looking at diesel at about 6 and change throughout the entire nation, which has slowed down shipments across the country, because either shippers are either trying to go very short distances, but in all cases, they want to have as full a load as they possibly can, and they will not ship unless they have a full load.
Maximize
because
the profit.
it's too expensive, both for the drivers as well as for the business. Now, one of the things that people have left out when they talk about the economy, two things. One, there's a theory that finances lag by about 9 months from one president to the next in most cases. That's not true when you're talking about energy because there's forward looking changes. But even if you said that, we are 18 months into the Biden administration. Any impact that could have come from the Trump Pence administration has already ended.
Mhm.
And this is the Biden Harris administration, where we have seen the biggest increase of inflation has occurred in the last 9 months when his policies, in the best case, the best, most objective case, that's purely Biden Harris administration policies that have ramped up the inflation from 3.5% to 4% to where we are now, last reported at 8.6%. In fact, I believe it's at 11, closer to 12%, and we're looking to go even higher. In the European Union, we've seen that they last reported in May 8.6%, which means they are a lagging factor. They're showing what's already happened, and they push us higher. And by the way, Germany just announced that they are now in an emergency crisis for energy and that they are now seeking, they're turning back on their coal
Coal
power
plants. Yeah.
to take up the energy, which means the cost of energy worldwide is going to go up even higher because Germany has that big a demand. Now,
Their industry, I mean, German industry is, I mean, that's the kind of the industrial center of Europe. Italy, Germany, you could call Russia, but that's gone out the window. I mean, it's kind of like Detroit, Michigan,
Yes.
here in the United States back in the day.
That's correct.
They stopped moving forward with nuclear power because of the Green Party, the same party that has just started turning back on their coal refineries, and they made a deal with Russia, who is their devil right now. It's absolutely insane. I mean, these people are they're all
But you know why we're
political
not
leadership.
talking about this? You know why, Alex, why we're not talking about this?
Why is that?
Because it's bad to talk about the economy hits every American, no matter what party they may be in, or even if they are not in a party. And so to distract from that, you've seen the Biden Harris administration blame it on Putin, which the news media allows, even though it's factually incorrect.
Oh, they back it up.
On every single chart you can bring up from the government itself, it proves that that is not true and that is not even close to real. But on top of that, we see that it's getting worse because we have no plan.
Right.
What's the plan for the food shortage that the White House has already announced coming this fall? There is.
Food shortage. Okay, we've already started touching on that a little bit with the price of diesel fuel. Let's go to something else that is very crucial for transporting of food. That is DEF.
DEF prices. Yep. The availability and pricing has gone through the roof. I have some friends, a very close friend of mine who drives a diesel truck. He spends $1,000 a day on diesel fuel driving his truck regionally. And I want to say at least a couple $100 of that is DEF. DEF used to be like 1/10 the cost of diesel. Now, because of the natural gas shortages, which is required to refine the urea for DEF, the price has gone through the roof. And without that particular chemical, diesel engines,
a lot of trucks will not run anything after 2010.
Yeah, they'll run in a very reduced, about 5 miles an hour, they'll move. So not only will the food or whatever not get from point A to point B, if it happens in the middle of the road, now you have traffic jams. You have incredible traffic jams that will block anything else that can move.
Yeah. Now, Jen mentions, by the way, that food plants have been burning down. I want to clarify something on that because I know a lot of people have been talking about it. There are over 2,000 food plants in the United States alone. About 10% have burned down. That is correct. But most people look at it as, oh my God, it's all of them. I just want to correct. It's about 10%. Now, given that there is going to be a food shortage, which is already happening, we have seen that in Sri Lanka. We are seeing that throughout Africa. We are seeing that in many of the third world nations already. And we know it's going to get worse because of the fertilizer that wasn't there, because of the cost of diesel, because of a lot of factors coming directly from the Biden-Harris administration, lack of leadership. It's going to get far, far worse. And then you add in 10% of the food that is gone, add in the avian flu that no one talks about anymore, and I've been talking about since January, that destroyed 30 million chickens and turkeys, which has increased the price of poultry. When you add these things in, you're looking, no wonder you see that 11% food prices at home have gone up by 11% and are looking to go higher. We've been talking about this for months.
It's
Yeah.
Whoops. Where'd you
I
go?
lost my. I think I lost my camera. It doesn't matter. I'm ugly, anyways. Mike. Something I've been hearing I've been hearing a lot
Which one?
about is the French Revolution. The most consistent statistical metric that people have been able to find to what caused the French Revolution is when food prices got above 20%.
Let them eat cake.
Huh?
Marie
Let them eat. Yes,
Mm.
exactly. Yes, sir. Let them eat cake. Looking at inflation costs right now, the metrics that they put out we're getting close to what, 10 to 12%. If you
Mhm.
look at shadow stats prediction or shadow stats analysis, which tracks data the way they did back in the 1970s 1980s before they changed the CPI to add hedonic adjustments and things like that, costs of renters instead of homeowners, we're looking at 20 to 30%. I mean, I can see 30% increases on certain food items. Toothpicks have gone up 30% over the past 2 years.
Meat
I
was
mean,
at 35% 2 months ago.
Yep, exactly. Now, this affects the poorest among us, the people who are struggling week to week. It is an attack on the blue collar community. It's attack on the working blood of this country. And people like the Biden-Harris administration, not only do they not care, but they're fanning the flames. They're throwing fuel on it at this point with their policies.
Because they need to get votes. The 2022 election has been and is the only thing they are concerned about. Hillary Clinton, a week and a half ago, came out and said, the only thing that matters is winning the election. Do whatever it takes to win. It's on Twitter. I am paraphrasing. It's almost exactly word for what she said when she was speaking with, it was a European news agency. I'm thinking that it was DW, but it might have been another organization. And she made it very clear. The only thing that matters is winning the next election. And what helps them win? Demonize everyone that opposes them, everyone that says that, look, this is the history. These are the facts that exist. And nothing makes a progressive more upset than facts. Ask Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She told you on 20 Minutes in 2018, 60 Minutes in 2018, facts don't matter. She doesn't want to be empirically, semantically, mathematically correct. She wants to have feelings. That's why they are doing this. And we see that it is taking an impact. That's why the latest thing is not only are they talking about guns and trying to demonize gun owners, but they're also going out now after a month of knowing that Roe v. Wade is going to get overturned. Amazing news. Roe v. Wade got overturned. And they're like, oh my God, who could have imagined this? You only knew for a month. If you really were worried about it, if you were really trying to protect your constituents, why didn't you take the month and pass a bunch of laws in these states since everyone wants to agree with you? Obviously, they don't. They didn't care. They want the controversy because they think that'll get them votes. My personal opinion.
Well, maybe that's why the Supreme Court let out the Second Amendment opinion yesterday and then put out the Roe versus Wade opinion today. Kind of let people know, all right, they're armed. Now here you go, and we're skipping town because they are gone. They added a day to their calendar to release Roe versus Wade.
Because it was going to overshadow everything else if they didn't.
Right. Exactly. Well, and these bureaucratic government organizations, they love putting out things on a Friday afternoon because people aren't paying as much attention. Can we step into Jane's Revenge and the attacks on pro-life centers across the country, the threat to the American to the population? I mean, every city across the country is on alert. I mean, I have a map here that shows all of the planned protests for the country. And the National Guard, I know for a fact that the National Guard have been put on alert. Units that are technically non-deployable because of out of standard weight and PT have been put on alert to deploy in defense of riots across the country. But the Department of Justice won't do anything. Their arrests, they have how many hundreds of people in jail as a result of January 6th? How long have the people been in jail because of the Gretchen Whitmer false flag operation? And
500 people a year and a half.
500 people in it for a year and a half. Yes. When they don't prosecute more than 17 people from the May 29th riots that actually burnt down a police checkpoint for the White House, not DC, the White House, and they can't do anything about these planned riots across the country. The Department of Justice, under Merrick Garland, they want us to suffer.
He's busy investigating parents at PTA meetings because they're concerned about what their kids are being taught. And he's using the full power of the FBI to investigate parents. So he doesn't have the time to investigate everything else.
I would say he has a dual motivation. I think he's fully bought in on the ideological aspect of it, but his son-in-law is highly invested in CRT. Look it up, folks. I'm not lying.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
So he has a monetary and ideological interest in throwing parents in jail and allowing left-wing radical terrorism. That's what this is. This is terrorism to get Supreme Court justices to reverse their opinions.
Well, you got to be clear. When you're saying it's terrorism, I mean, you can only say that if by chance there happened to be a statute in the United States government that said that it is illegal to protest in front of the home of a judge, especially in the Supreme Court, and that if someone were to do that, that is considered judicial intimidation and that they must be arrested. It is a felony. Only if that happened to exist, which, by the way, it does.
I was going to say, shucks, Mike, I could have sworn there was something there for that.
Yeah, and it exists. And so they could have enforced that and they chose to ignore it. But don't worry. See, it's not like there was a precedent set by the January 6th, many people call them prisoners or incarcerations.
Political prisoners.
Many people say that. And these January 6th individuals set a precedence that if you happen to be on the property of the Capitol, invited by police, as courts have denoted, that hundreds of people were allowed to enter, as seen on video, by police officers who peaceably entered and stayed within the lines of the corridors, that even though they were allowed in, that did not count. And so that means that when the Colbert Report, a Hollywood producers, elitists, entered the Capitol without authorization by the invite of Representative Adam Schiff of California, he didn't have the authorization to allow them to do that either. When he let them walk off on their own without his supervision, which is illegal, that was also part of the crime, which is punishable by 1.5 years in jail. No, you do not get the potential for bail. You must wait to then be charged, to then go to court where you can plea bargain. And if you plea bargain, you will get 3 years of probation plus a fine. That's in the plea. And the Colbert Report which was allowed in without authorization, allowed to roam around without authorization, allowed to bang on doors and threaten Republican members of Congress, which is the same thing that happened to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She wasn't present. She claimed that someone banged on her door, which was a police officer. She wasn't present during the time that the Capitol incident happened, and she felt that was intimidation. Therefore, the Colbert Report, banging on the doors of Republicans that may or may not have been present, were being intimidated. He did exactly what happened in January 6th, point for point. They were released overnight on bail, and there probably will be no charges put forward. This is a two-tiered system. Yet again, you can't have guns. You're going to starve. Inflation's going higher, but smile. You get to watch the Colbert Report because they're special, and you sure as hell aren't.
Bread and circuses, Mike. Bread and circuses.
And this is all public information, folks. I'm not relying on my sources. I have sources in Congress. I'm not relying.
What about the protests that AOC actually led in the middle of the hall in the Capitol building?
Well,
I'm actually unfamiliar with this. What's going on with that?
Are you talking about the one today where she was screaming along with Maxine Waters when they were screaming that they have to overthrow the Supreme Court and not follow the decisions of the Supreme Court, where they were actually asking for an insurrection that happened today? Are we talking about that?
No, I wasn't talking about that one. I was talking about the one that she had a couple years ago.
No,
so you
about the lady?
AOC has been citing multiple insurrections over the years.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she should be charged and prevented from running from election again.
How about the lady on oh shit, what's the name of the show? One of the podcasts on Free Speech TV today. I'm sitting there listening to that because unfortunately my father-in-law is a very hard left-winger. So he watches all these guys. I've told you guys about my confrontation with Tom Hartman and all them. But I was watching the ladies show, and she brought on these two ladies from BLM. And the one lady was sitting there screaming and yelling that this is the civil fucking war. The blue tsunami is here. We need to stand the fuck up and burn this bitch to the ground. On live TV, talking about going and burning the Supreme Court to the ground.
I mean,
think she'll be arrested?
No, absolutely not. I mean, they erected rat fencing outside of Supreme Court, as I understand it. The same fencing that's been surrounding the Capitol since Biden was inaugurated.
Yeah. These are all, this is not new. Again, we're watching real time. The very thing, what I see every time is two things happen every time. When someone even hints that they disagree with the approved messaging coming from the progressive movement, then they go out and their answer is always riot. They call it a protest, peaceful protest, as arson is going on in the background. People are dead. They supposedly peacefully, go out and have a protest that results in people dying, property being destroyed, people's lives being just ruined for life. And the other thing that they always do every single time is decide that, well, they have to do what they tell us Republicans are going to do, what conservatives are going to do, the very things that and you know why they do that? They demonize us for the things that they do. They're afraid one day conservatives, Republicans are going to do what they do. They're terrified that one day Republicans and conservatives are going to show up and peacefully protest with a couple of arsons out in the background. They're terrified of that. That's why they have to demonize us and tell us that we're doing what they just did.
Here's the thing, though, you know, it actually lines pretty well with a theory I have about why the right, I mean, I'm not talking, why the real right has not, the conservative side of the aisle hasn't become violent, and it lines up well with why the left side of the aisle's violence is so bad. Like how they're not very good at doing things. Like the guy who was going after Merrick Garland was a psycho, had a breakdown, ended up calling the cops on himself.
Not Merrick Garland, you mean Kavanaugh.
I'm sorry, you're right, Kavanaugh.
The California man who was upset about Roe v. Wade and gun rights. So he took his gun across state lines into Maryland, where it was illegally owned, where he had illegal possession of a firearm, to then intimidate a Supreme Court justice, which is also illegal. And he's doing fine.
Right.
This is their logic.
But the people who are the real war fighters of this nation, they're not engaging in this nonsense because they know what civil war really looks like. They know what it does to a culture, to a society, to a country, and they do not want to be involved.
No.
The rational people in this conversation do not want violence, and that is predominantly the conservative side of the aisle. The people who are causing violence, in large part from the political side of the aisle, Nancy Waters, Nancy Pelosi, frickin' Chuck Schumer, out there on the Supreme Court, yelling at the Supreme Court, "You will reap the whirlwind." This rhetoric, obviously, it inspires crazy people like the guy who went after Kavanaugh to commit violence. The real war fighters, they don't want to be involved. They just want, God, they just want to raise a family and be left the F alone. But
immigrants from other countries around the world don't want it. You think about, think about all the refugees we take in from around the world, the refugees from Syria, the refugees from Haiti, the refugees from how many countries do we need to name? Where they're the refugees coming from the Ukraine. They're getting away from conflict. They're not here saying, "Hey, Democrats, you're right. Let's make more conflicts." They're like, "Calm down. You got a great country. Leave it alone." That's why they
literally just had the conversation on the phone. I hung up with the guy on the phone right before I jumped in your guys' stream. A congressional candidate in a very hard left state that is aware he's not going to win his election because any type of conservatism just gets deleted in his state.
Sounds like New York.
We had a pretty honest and open conversation, and I won't go into great detail, but he called me to ask me why the conservative side of the spectrum is not just taking up arms and starting the second revolution. And I said, because if you really think about it, and I want you to hear me out without cutting me off so that I can finish this entire statement. The conservative side is the realist side. We're the side that realizes that we need a multi-party system. We're the side that realizes that we need to preserve democracy. We're the side that realizes that if we do go into a second revolution, and I quoted Mike Marshall, if we do go into a second revolution, we're the side that's afraid of what might come out the other side of the second revolution. And we're the side that always gets labeled and deleted from history when we do stand up. So we've gotten to the point where we're all just sitting and waiting, but bet your ass when the day comes that they do it, we're all here and ready. We can't be the ones to start it, and we need to be the ones to keep trying to save it. Let them go out and burn cities to the ground. Let them go out and riot. Let them go out and do whatever they're going to do. Every time we're upset, we sit here and we argue amongst ourselves and have debates. We don't go out and burn people's businesses to the ground. We don't go out and burn people's restaurants and blow up people's cars and their car lots and throw blocks and bricks at police officers. We've never been those people. And if we let them go and let them play this out long enough, come November, when the conservative wave takes over, they're going to be the ones that look like the idiots. And they're going to be the ones choking on their words and not understanding how to do anything. And it'll be them that steps up and starts any type of second conflict if we ever hit it.
Local populations do not appreciate, enjoy, or want violence in the streets.
No.
There are people who call themselves a part of the conservative, the Nick Fuentes type people who are just tangentially just about ready to start calling for straight up violence in the streets. So those types of voices need to be suppressed, and irrational voices who say things need to be handled legally through the legislation and through the Constitution to have real change be done. Those are the voices that need to be promoted, and that's what's happening. That's the reason why the right side of the aisle has not taken up arms and really started doing real violence, because we know that there is a legislative process to get things done, and we can correct all of these things down the road as long as we hand it with rational thought and action. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, you're right, Alex. But I just want to mention, think about this, and many people will say, "Who's Nick Fuentes?" You're right. You shouldn't know who he is. He's a fringe individual, and he represents a fringe ideology, and that's why he's denounced by most of the right. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad man. I'm not saying he's evil. That's not the same thing. I'm saying his ideology, which does push the edge and push the envelope towards a more confrontational kind of approach, that's not what conservatism is. That isn't what the Republican ideals are. Our confrontation is verbal. Our confrontation is, here are the facts. Here is the evidence. To confront, when I'm upset about with Justice Breyer, is his emotional plea and his manipulation of evidence and the public. The fact that he's covering up, trying to put in place the federal government above the individual in contravention of our Constitution and every law that we have. I'm upset about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and a whole generation of students just like her who have no real world capabilities, but they believe everything rotates around their feelings and that any actual fact is not substantive because their feelings are more important. That's why they have the relative, it's my truth. It's the most stupid thing I've ever heard people say, and they say they're educated. I've got a master's degree. It's my truth. No, you don't have a truth. You have an opinion, and it's fantastic. Have whatever opinion you want, but you don't get to have your truth. There is the truth, which is empirical. It is factual. It is demonstrable. That is the truth. And then you have your feeling, which is entirely different.
Mm-hmm. And then we have, so we're not just picking on liberals and their feelings and so forth. We have a lot of people.
Let's go after the Republicans. Side. Well, we have 14, 15 people in this in the Senate, 15 Republicans in the Senate that voted for the Mike, what's that bill called again?
S2 2938.
Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. A large majority of those Republicans are not either not up for election, retiring, or not seeking re-election. They will not be in office next year, one way or another.
Yeah, and that wasn't the route that I was going.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I was actually touching back on to, Zach had stated earlier, the guy that he's talking with on the phone. Asking why haven't conservatives taken up arms? I mean, you see this across social media all the time. Well, by golly, the Sons of Liberties would have already been shooting people, and etc. Okay, they would have already started a war. No, they wouldn't. If you actually look at the historical record, okay, they did not start the violence. They defended themselves against the violence.
And they tried to peacefully.
We looked at Boston Massacre, Okay. It was violence brought upon them. If we look at Lexington, it was violence brought upon them. If we look at Concord, it was violence brought upon them. They were defending themselves.
And
They
how
had
odd.
no other choice.
And isn't
I'm
that
actually,
odd? Isn't it odd? They were defending themselves and they wrote a law, an amendment, the Second Amendment, that says you have the right to defend yourself.
Exactly.
What?
I'm actually really happy that you just said that, Marshall, because towards the end of our conversation, I mentioned to him every single thing that you just did. And if you actually go through some of the letters, and you actually go through some of the history, they pleaded and they tried and they sought independence and they disagreed with leadership. And then they defended themselves against tyranny.
Right.
And that's exactly where we are right now.
They literally tried every peaceful recourse to try to stop the tyranny that was happening against them.
Exactly. And what Alex was saying, nice to meet you, by the way. I'm Zach. I don't think I've met you yet.
Not as of yet. Nice to meet you, Zach.
What Alex was just saying about these 15 senators that signed an agreement with S 2938, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Something that I want you guys to all pay attention to is the next quarterly FEC filings. Because Alex stated, most of these people are people that are not going to be winning their election or up for re-election. So this is like they're on their way out. And what I was talking to with another senator candidate today, he said to me, the guy that you had doing your interview for Wesley Smith, have that guy pay attention, and he's talking about Vasquez, to the FEC quarterly reports for all 15 of these senators when the next filings come around.
Actually, what people need to look for, and this is important, and it's something that you can find. If you want to find some of this stuff, one of the sources that I use, it's nonpartisan. Everyone uses it. Everyone is aware of it. It's called opensecrets.com. If you don't want to go to the FEC and try and look through the filings individually, which I do, you can just go to opensecrets.com. Nonpartisan. All they do is publish the numbers that are there. What you're looking for is party contributions, which is under the listing of PACs, non-corporate PACs, the PAC spending, where one candidate gives money to another candidate. We saw the same thing happen in New York State. Andrew Cuomo, after he was released from all criminal charges of the 11 sexual assaults that were identified and proven by the AG Letitia James, he had $18.5 million in donations, free and clear, that he could use. Now, because he's disgraced and no longer a governor or a political elected official, he dropped off. He dropped off the radar, but his donations still get tracked. And that's what you got to look for. These guys are getting out. Look for who they are giving the money to, because that will tell you someone that believes the same thing these 15 senators believe, that someone who is going to do the same thing. I don't care what they tell you publicly. They know most people don't look at the votes themselves, and they're going to get money to support the same idea that these 15 who are walking away to support that same ideology. That's who you can look for. That's how
he told me that I need to have you pay attention to the FEC's filings for the next quarter. He mentioned every time something like this happens, and I've been aware of this, but it just hearing it come from a senatorial candidate really opens your eyes. He said, you pay attention to this, because when the next FEC filings are done, you're going to see millions of dollars being dumped into new people that are coming in.
Yep.
So they're already basically being bought before they're even elected.
Some cases.
And I was like, that's a really good point. It's, yeah, we need to watch it, and I'll let Mr. Vasquez know. Our video really brought a lot of attention, like I already told you. And I was on the phone all day today. And when I woke up this morning and I watched Roe v. Wade, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked.
We knew for a month.
Yeah. And when my leftist father-in-law got real upset and real mad, I said, what you need to be worrying about right now is what's coming out in the next hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, what are you talking about? And I said, every MSM broadcast right now is in an uproar over Roe v. Wade. And if history's taught us anything, it's that when all media is in an uproar and covering the same story, something else is going on. And what you're so mad about right now is not what you need to be mad about today, because while this is all going on, they're voting on whether or not to pass S-2938. And he said, well, what is S-2938? And I said, it is a gun bill, the strongest one we've seen in 30 or 40 years. And they're passing the vote. They're voting on it right now. Well, you're sitting here in an uproar over women's rights, and you've got a penis.
It's old news.
And he's like, well, what do you mean?
They
Well,
ginned
then
up
the news came out.
the news.
Then the news came out that they passed it, and he was just irate. I mean, he went through the roof because he's a leftist, but he's pro-gun. He's against gun control. So he's like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was going on. And I was like, come on, man, open your eyes, wake up. This is not new. Every single time, look back at when we were legalizing gay marriages. Okay, I'm not a homophobe. I'm not against who people love. I really don't care. Just don't push your beliefs on me, is my philosophy. But if you go back to that time, when gay marriages were being voted on, what was all over the mainstream media? The rebel flag being a sign of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That was all the media coverage, was fighting about the rebel flag. And then 4 hours later, the vote passed for gay marriages. And everybody was like, what? Like, you're shocked? Like, open your eyes, pay attention.
Zach, your point there was very interesting. The fact that you had, your father-in-law is, he's anti-gun control, or pro-gun rights, but anti-abortion. He sounds like a left-wing populist.
Yeah.
Would you classify him as that?
Yeah.
All right. So we found just in this conversation one avenue where left-wing and right-wing populists can find neutral ground. And I really think that's the best way of actually getting consensus in our culture, is for the right and left populists, the people who believe that the government should represent the people together, and we negotiate and talk as humans. You want this, I want that. We all want 90% of the pie. We just disagree on 10%. But the institution, the deep state, the elitists, whatever you want to say, they accent at 90% as being the total part of what we disagree about. But if we could bring it back to 10% and then find common ground with the left-wing populace, we can actually create a coalition of both sides.
You mean for Congress to do what it was initially created to do?
Right, exactly. People like here in Ohio, J.D. Vance, who's walking in as a Republican conservative, but he's a populist. He's going to do what's best for his population, or he knows he's going to be thrown out as soon as humanly possible. Now he's running for the Senate, so he's got 6 years. But I tell you what, there is a West Virginia senator who just got elected, who voted for the red flag laws in the Senate, and I know quite a few people out there who will not forget over the past 6 years. She is done. She is out in 6 years. They're not going to forget. And then, people like us just have to start keep reminding people that we have people in elected government who don't have our best interests in mind, and we need to remove them for populist politicians that serve the population, period.
Yep.
Politicians count on the fact that the public has a very short-term span. See, that's why we're so important, because we're bringing up, oh, here's the history, here's the documentation, here's the track record, here are the facts that exist, because they're counting on the fact that you don't remember 3 months ago what was going on. They count on the fact that people will say, and I have people who tell me all the time, it's called authority bias, authority confirmation bias, which is, well, the news media, they're authorities. They must be correct. Okay, remember 2 weeks ago, that same authority, USA Today, told the public that they have reporters who fabricated stories. 1 month ago, NBC News came out and announced that they had reporters who were fabricating stories. We've seen that come out of the New York Times, where they fabricated stories, in Rolling Stone, fabricated stories that they have hidden the truth, but they expect that the public doesn't remember that. That's what we're here for. This is why they don't like independent media, because we point out and go, well, here's the report. I remember it. I spoke about this avian flu. I mentioned that earlier in the show. I was talking about that in January. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. It's there. You want to talk about gas price? I was talking about the economy back on February 17th of 2021, telling everyone how bad this was going to be because of the policies. You don't have to believe me. Look it up. It's there. Yep. And we do that. And we've been talking in this program about the Second Amendment, about constitutional rights, First Amendment for months. This has all been lead up. Why aren't we talking? Everyone's like, you should be so upset about abortion. Talked about it last month. This is old news. There is nothing new about this. The argument's already been had. We already know. And if these Democrats,
Capital, yep.
if they were really so involved in this, if they really cared about women's rights that they think are being lost, that women suddenly today no longer have any rights, the LGBTQ lost all their rights, minorities, lost all our rights this morning. If they actually believe that, then what the hell have they been doing for 30 days that they knew this was coming? They knew.
Can I share something real quick?
Please.
Go ahead.
Personal experience. And I'm not talking down on them at all, but my wife and my mother, all right, both upset over the Roe v. Wade thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody I've talked to today, women on Facebook, in comments, upset over the Roe v. Wade. Why? And I get, well, the government just banned abortions.
No, they didn't.
No, it didn't.
Complete
What
lie.
fucking CNN headline did you read?
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you talking about? What TikTok account did you watch? What does that matter? Because you're reading a headline and you're taking it as gospel. CNN just became your preacher. And it's like, well, how so? The government didn't ban abortions. The government just recognized that it's not a constitutional right and it's not their job to make this decision. They put the power back in control of the states, like it should have been from day one. Well, that's not what happened. Now they're going after birth control. Now they're going to ban this. Now they're going to do that. Now next it'll be condoms.
Now they like preventing the expansion of our population, it seems.
Yeah.
It's just, it blows my mind that people can, Mike, I've said this to you guys a dozen times, and I'm never going to stop saying it. The biggest problem that I have with the left is that they are an organization of headliners.
Well,
the people
right.
read a headline. The people read a headline,
buzzwords,
and it's boom all day. That's all they are. Is, oh my God, the government just banned abortions. Like, come on. Can you actually just go get off CNN, get off TikTok, get off Facebook, wherever you're reading it? Go read the actual ruling. Go read the notes. It's all public information. It'll be there. And then how are you going to feel when you realize that you're wrong?
It'll be too
And on
late.
our page today, I haven't been on there. I don't know, Mike and Mike, if either of you guys have gone through like any of NFC's notifications. I've kind of been off it today because I've just been so upset. But I noticed right away that we had a lot of people on the page that are pro-abortion and pro-choice, that are like calm and collective. We had comments on our posts that said, "Did the government really ban abortion? Can you please enlighten me?" And I said, no, the government didn't ban abortion. They just gave the power back to the states.
Well,
Oh, okay, that's not a big deal. And when you just said, Alex, that we need to come together on common ground, the people I learned today that out of the 7,500 followers we actually have quite a few people that are left-wing pro-2A on our page, because they weren't upset over Roe v. Wade, but they immediately questioned it and they wanted knowledge on it. And I was very happy to see that most of the people commenting were commenting with a level head and saying, no, the government didn't ban abortions. The government didn't just betray women's rights. Here's a link. The government did this. And it wasn't me responding. It was other people on the page. So I have a sense of hope that there is common ground for the left and the right.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't agree, because as an example, here's my tweet. 6/23/22, June 23rd. Late-term abortion up to the moment of birth was illegal in New York State and several other states. June 24th, 2022. Late-term abortion up until the moment of birth is still legal in New York State and multiple other states. This is the difference after the SCOTUS ruling. That's what I had to say, which is actually absolutely correct.
Right.
What people are freaking out on, I'll show you. They think that Alyssa Milano, who has 1,050 quote tweets, 882 likes, banning abortion is about controlling women and trans men. What? It's about white supremacy. How? The patriarchy. There's women who voted for, who ruled on this, and black men, by the way. And
oh yeah,
misogyny. This is against women. They have the same rights going on. It's a sad day for America. This is from Alyssa Milano. She says that banning abortion will disproportionately impact people of color. Yes, black women will probably have less. They're the leading people. As per Margaret Sanger, a eugenicist who wanted to eliminate black people, she created Planned Parenthood, and they have successfully done what she wanted, kill black babies. So yes, it's going to impact people of color. The LGBTQ. You know, I saw Steven Crowder this morning. He had a funny part about this. 2 lesbians, 2 gay men are not worried about the
Getting pregnant.
They ain't getting pregnant. It's not happening. Trans people generally aren't getting pregnant. So I don't know what they're trans women
hey,
getting pregnant. That's just
didn't you get your pregnant man emoji update?
You know, yeah.
Talking about the one that looks like Bill Gates?
It's crazy. Yeah, really. And people struggling to make ends meet, young people and those living in rural areas. That's called contraception. That's
Right.
not called abortion. Abortion isn't about contraception. You know what? The answer that I have for people who are worried about, oh, you're poor, we're not sure, we haven't planned this out. Fantastic. Do the same thing that you should do to prevent monkeypox. Be a little pickier about who you have sex with and be protected when you do it. It works for monkeypox. It'll work for abortion. I'm sorry that you cannot just frivolously stick it and have it stuck anywhere you want with anyone you want at every moment and not have to worry about it. There are consequences.
Hey,
Jan,
all right.
the states that quote unquote have full abortion bans do not have full abortion bans.
Nope.
They
Rape
have
still have
X's
stipulations for
after
rape and
6
abortion.
weeks, and there are several exemptions that still allow abortions to be sought after 6 weeks.
Rape, incest, the life of the mother, not
Mhm.
her life, not her well-being, not her emotions, not her. New York State has a wonderful wording on this because it may, the way New York State says it is, may affect a woman's health, not the life of the mother, may affect the mother. Which, with the difference of that is if she says I have a headache, she can get an abortion in New York
Yep.
State. If she says I feel bad today, she can get an abortion. But if
Oh, I'm getting fat.
so that's different.
I'm getting an abortion.
That
Hey,
means you can get a
I'm
late,
gaining weight.
and
She
when
can
I
get
say
an abortion.
abortion, I mean late term up to the moment of conception. That is what New York State says. If she has a hangover, she has a headache, she feels fat, she feels bloated, at the moment of birth, she is allowed in New York State to have an abortion because it affects the mother, not having a permanent life-threatening impact, just that it affects it. So these laws have not changed. And when you highlight this to people across this nation and you point out these examples, that is the law. And people go, even people who are pro-abortion will turn around and go, well, I'm not in favor of that.
Nope.
Well, there you go, Mike. I mean, you just gave two really good points there to show that there are parallels where the populist and populist right can come together: inflation, cost of living, and abortion. I mean, once you add in the heartbeat bill, the rape and incest stipulations, 70, what'd you say it was, a 75% of the country is like, okay, yeah, I can deal with that, that's okay. These are all lines where we can come to common ground and come to a common understanding and actually negotiate and, I mean, for lack of a better term, have diplomatic relations at this point, as it seems like we're tippy-toeing into a civil war.
Well,
Well, I
it's
didn't.
the same thing they did with, again, going back to guns as we started earlier today. This is about putting the government over the individual, because the government gets to choose your health care. The government gets to choose how your body is being used or not being used. The government gets to decide whether or not you get protected and how you're going to be, and to what degree you're going to be protected. It's the government, because the government's an authority. They're smart. Have you listened to Joe Biden? Have you watched him ride a bike? I don't think the government is smarter than a 5-year-old walking down the street, if that's the example I have to go by.
Hey, did you guys get the itinerary?
For who?
Did you see the itinerary?
Oh, Joe Biden's cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Sit in yours. You sit in your seat. You sit you ask,
so he's literally just corporeal form at this point. He has
We have
nothing
been
going on
saying-
upstairs. He's just a body.
We have been saying
this is
for
fact.
we have been saying for 2 years that this man is a puppet and that he is orchestrated and that everything he says is pre-planned and wrote down on a card.
And literally,
Nobody wanted to believe it. Everybody said no. The entire left said that's bullshit. And then today, he accidentally showed his index card to the camera of the press that literally told him to walk in, sit down, who to address, what to say.
Wait. Not sit down. Walk in, say hello to everyone. Sit in your seat. It's capitalized.
Yep.
Your seat. Not so that he wouldn't just sit somewhere randomly. You are going to your seat. Then you're going to speak, and then you're going to say goodbye, and you're going to talk to this person who's going to be on a teleprompter. They're not in the room. It's on the sheet.
Yeah.
And the first sheet that he's had that we've caught him, like when he did several of his press conferences where we've gotten pictures of his sheet where every member of the press is sitting and numbers on who he's calling in order and what question they are going to ask. This
Yep.
is the government that we're supposed to have confidence in. That's
Well, I
supposed
want to
to
go back to what you were just talking about, Vasquez, about how
Yes.
you were referencing the safer sex and how the monkeypox thing. Okay. All day, I've had female people from the page pissed off, my wife, my mother, and I say they make condoms, you know, $2, $3 a box. And here's my thing. They argue and they bitch about it. And they say, well, some guys don't like to use condoms. Some women are allergic to condoms. Okay, well, they make different kind of condoms.
Yeah.
This is coming from the people that were told for 2 years and followed what they were told. Wear a mask. It will prevent you from getting sick.
That's a
But
really
now
good
we
point,
stand
man.
up and say, wear a condom. It'll prevent you from getting pregnant and having to go through a medical procedure to abort a baby. And we're fucking mentally ill.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. It's frustrating.
I know this is all very frustrating. Can I take a hard, kind of hard 90-degree and kind of talk a little bit about the culture war kind of debate? And I have an issue. So I'm from Ohio. And this past week, last week, there was an incident that took place outside of one of LeBron James's schools that he built in Akron. Did you guys hear about this?
Yes.
Okay,
A little bit.
All right. So, Mike, if you want, you can share a screen. You don't have to. But Ethan Lemming was a kid being a jackass and shooting some kind of water pellet gun, and ended up getting beaten to death by some other people outside of the LeBron James school. Now, that is a horrible tragedy, obviously.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, they're keeping it quiet because, I mean, LeBron James has no problem going after the cop in Columbus who had to shoot Michaela Bryant because she was about to stab a chick, but has nothing to say about the white kid who was beaten to death outside of his own school that he helped to build. Now, it is an incredible situation where the culture is taking such a turn to where you can comment on one person's death and on another person's death specifically because of their race, especially when one of those deaths happens outside of your school and the other one happened in Columbus, and you're talking about the cop getting revenge against him.
This is stupid. Got to remind people about the Michaela. And I'll do it after you're done. But
no, I just want to highlight how insane things have gotten that we have to have these conversations. I mean, that's it.
Did you say a white kid?
Well, Michaela Bryant.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, the kid happened to be white who was beaten to death outside of the school he was going to that LeBron James built. But the fact that LeBron James won't comment on that because the kid is white, but has no problem going after the white cop who killed Michaela Bryant in Columbus,
right,
when she was literally about to stab another girl to death. Like, you see the pictures, knife about ready to go in. The people he attacks are, especially from somebody of his prominence, who is a rock star in Ohio, shows how broken our culture is.
Oh yeah.
I want people to see this. You got to see this. It's insane, folks. I'm just.
I can't read it.
I'm going to show you guys something that you just about Michaela Bryant, because it's so. There it is. Come on. No, my screen doesn't want to do what I want it to do. Come on.
Digital patience. I hate it too.
Well, I'm used to my system.
Well,
running
just wait till Elon Musk puts the implants in our brains and we get the information instantly.
Mike, you stay the F out of my head.
But I want people to see this, and you can show it on the screen. This is Michaela Bryant. This is what we're talking about. Okay. LeBron James said that the police officer, in fact, several of the talking heads said that they should have left this alone, that the police officer should not have interrupted. It's just a knife fight. This happens in every high school. I want you to think about this. This was April 20th of 2021. The girl with the knife winding up like it's a baseball bat in the black is Michaela Bryant. She's 16 at the time, and she is about to commit murder. This is homicide with a knife, which happens 4 times as often as when we see mass shootings in America every year. She is about.
Can I correct you?
She's about to add to that homicide, knife homicides in America, as she's about to stab to death the girl in the pink, who happens to be 16 years old. The cop who was on scene, literally 6 seconds. I counted in the video when it came out. I watched. This is from the police cam. I counted. It's 6 seconds from when he gets out the car to this moment. And he has about half a second to decide, do I let Michaela stab this girl to death, or do I try and stop her? He shot. He stopped her. The girl in pink is alive. And LeBron James came out and said, well, that was pure racism. Does that look like racism to you?
Can I bring my 2A side out and add to your commentation?
And I'm going to jump right behind you, Zach.
I would like to point out that one of the charges that you would receive for the image that you just saw, in defense of the Second Amendment, if she would have killed her with a knife, she would have got homicide or manslaughter or murder, whatever the court ruled. But one of the charges that would have entailed and would have been attached to that would have been assault with a deadly weapon.
Yes.
We have got so many people in this country that do not understand, by definition, what an assault weapon is.
No.
That image right there is a perfect example of an assault weapon. By definition, it is an act of assault with a deadly weapon, and it would have been a charge of assault with a deadly weapon,
yes,
along with murder charges, homicide charges, whatever. And that's what people need to understand. When you are saying ban assault weapons, you're going to ban knives? You're going to ban rocks? You're going to ban pencils? Staplers? Baseball bats? Tire irons?
There is nothing that has not been used to kill another human being in the history of mankind.
You can kill Abel with a rock.
You can kill somebody with your bare hands. Hell, you can. I mean, Thing from Family Matt or the Addams Family could choke somebody to death if you wanted to. I mean, anything can be used as a weapon. Zach, to your, I'm going to kind of jump onto your point and ride a little bit. That cop was faced with Voss. What'd you say? 6 seconds to make a decision.
Yes.
Okay,
he had 6 seconds.
Yeah. He had to make a decision in 6 seconds to shoot a girl, and not only did he have to deal with the fact that he had to kill somebody, his life has been destroyed.
Yeah.
How are we going to get good people to be police officers and sheriffs when we treat them this way? When we take good cops who are defending people and are being treated like garbage, what are they going to do? They're going to leave. They're not going to come back. Who do we get in return? We get the type of cops who represent the 7-5 in New York back in the 70s and the 80s, the corrupt cops, the LA squads who are basically drug dealers. We get all that back, and they want to take our 2A, our right to defend ourselves away from us over my dead effing body.
Well, you saw it. You saw a perfect example of thought process of police officers in Uvalde, Texas.
Mhm.
I am
Yes,
100% certain, as much as all four of us are sitting here, that at least half of those police officers wanted badly to just barge in there and shoot that guy.
I'd
I
like to
disagree
read
with
more.
you. No, I disagree because
I don't think so.
if one of them wanted to, he would have.
Well, listen, hear me out. Hear me
Okay, go
out.
ahead.
We have not had an opportunity to interview every single police officer. But if you pay attention and look through our recent history of the discretion that or not discretion, but the discrepancies against police officers across our country have began becoming fearful of the repercussions of killing somebody.
Or Shay
Right? Their commanding officer gave them the order to stand down, that this is a barricade situation. Now, as a man with kids, if I was one of them cops, no fucking commanding officer would have stopped me from going through that door. But with the way that we've treated the police in the last 3 years, I would have doubted doing it, because you can't tell what somebody would have thought until you're put in that situation. But if they had the thought process of, if I disobey an order, if I go in there, my entire career ends right here, possibly.
But how long are you expected to make that type of decision? They were in there for what, 77 minutes listening to this?
Let me give you
ahead, boss.
devil's advocate approach to this. Now, I have a lot of problems with this. One thing that's being missed: police are disciplined. It's kind of like the military, in the sense that I'm a former Marine. Mike, you're a former Marine. You know this.
Mhm.
We are trained with the concept that when I am given an order by a superior officer, go up to that hill and kill the machine gunner, and there is an open field between the machine gunner and me, we go and do it. In fact, Marines are known for that, because in France, we're called devil dogs, and we have the florige to symbolize when we actually did exactly that. Sent wave after wave of Marines into the forest or across an open field to kill a bunch of guys with machine guns. You only get that kind of dedication from individuals who have been trained to be disciplined and to react, that when they get the order, they act without thought, without complaint, even if they think it's wrong. You do it anyway. Now, some of the officers, and I'm not going to say all of them, and this is true for officers across the country, and I'm not going to say all of them, but there is a good percentage of these officers, they can't react emotionally. Look at the crap that they deal with every day. They can't be emotional. They have to rely on, I've been given a command by someone in charge. I can't think about this, because if I get emotional, I'm going to go berserk. I have to follow that order. I can't think about this right now. I'll think about it later, and I will just do what I am told. Now, I don't know if that's 50%, 40%, 25% of police. I don't know. But there is a percentage of them, they have to react that way, because no one in their right mind goes into the situations they go into and are emotional every single time. They can't be. They have to shut that off until later. Just like military doesn't think about, I'm about to do something ass backwards that anyone in their right mind would never do. Same thing with 9/11 and firefighters all across this nation every day. No one in their right mind runs into the fire burning building that's about to collapse on your head. They do it anyway. And they put down that emotion, they shut it off, and they do what they're told. Now, for those who aren't reacting like that, and more importantly, for the leadership, knowing that they have people who will do whatever they say at that moment, because they know these guys aren't going to think it through. They're just going to do what they're told. That leadership is the most damned of everyone, because they're the guys who are supposed to stand back, evaluate the situation, and say, hey, we just went through training. We know what we're supposed to be doing. We know the general layout of this and what that guy has. We will overwhelm him with firepower and personnel and end this now, because the most deadly time, the longer we wait, the more people potentially will die. That is always the case in every mass shooting. They didn't do that. I blame primarily the leadership. They took advantage of their officers that rely on the fact that I can't think, that guy's thinking, he better have the right answer. Now, is that perfect? Does that answer all of them? Absolutely not. And we did see that an off-duty border patrol borrowed a gun because he was outside that loop. He was emotional. He was thinking. He got the gun, got over there, and ran into that room.
I'm going to push back on you a little bit, Mike, because, I mean, while we do have central command, deference is always given to command on the ground. The person
I don't care which command it is. I don't.
Right, no, I'm talking. If we're comparing military versus civilian, if we're drawing that parallel right now, on the in the field, I mean, even if it's a bomb squad guy, the person on the ground has deference over the central command that's not on the ground. That police lieutenant who was giving orders not to a breach was not on the ground. The people who were on the ground should have stood up, should have said something, should have breached. They had a holigan. They had every way of getting in there. They chose not
but they
to.
don't have that command. See,
there's been excuse.
And you're right, then. That's a failure of. That's a failure of leadership. I agree with you 100%, Mike. But I mean, yeah, then we should really reevaluate how these police officers are trained, because talking to many people in New York, Mike, tell me, please, New York City, the doctrine is if you have a mass shooting, if you have a school shooting and you are on scene and you don't go in, you're fired immediately, hand in your badge, you're gone. Is that not the case even in New York City? No.
Oh,
never mind.
I don't think that's the policy.
I got bad information then, because that's never mind then.
No, that's what
I
we
know that being a policy anywhere.
Yeah,
no, I've never heard that anywhere. I did a lot of research on the Uvalde stuff because Uvalde hit me kind of personal. One of my friends that I worked with for 4 years lost his 8-year-old son in Uvalde.
Oh, that's horrible.
Oh, brother, God,
and it really messes with me, because as a man, as a dad, you know, I'm sure a bunch of those police officers have kids. This is what I was mentioning, when you don't know until you're put in that situation. And I'm not saying we're all going to go out and become cops and we're all going to go be put in a mass shooting situation. But that is one of the situations where the police are trained to follow orders. The police are trained to do as their commander says, or as their superior says. But in that particular situation, there's no way anybody on this God-given earth is going to convince me that at least a handful of those police officers were not questioning or doubting in their minds standing there.
Oh, I guarantee they were.
So true. Yeah,
I guarantee.
All right.
They were.
And in that thought process, all right, this isn't over 6 seconds like he had the decision to make over Michaela. This is over minutes, over a half an hour, over an hour.
Over an hour, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These men had to stand there and rattle around in their head if it was right for them to keep standing there. And I'm going to tell you right now that any of them police officers that have a conscience and a heart and a soul are probably going to regret for the rest of their lives following orders and not breaching that door and shooting the shooter.
Well, what does that tell you about our police force, that they can turn cops into cucks that will sit there and listen to children being shot to death?
It's not just it's media. It's the entire country. We have put police officers in a position to where if a cop pulls up on an assault and a guy comes out with a knife, that cop gets put in a position where he has to make a split-second decision to discharge his weapon or turn around and run away. All right. Most cops are going to make the decision to discharge their weapon. But with the way the media has been scrutinizing and criminalizing and demonizing police, a lot of police with any type of integrity or character are getting afraid to do what needs to be done. They're questioning their careers. They're questioning their integrity. Am I going to get put in a fucking IA investigation and called a murderer and possibly put in prison for shooting this guy?
Yeah.
Well, we need to say something.
Yep.
I want people to remember. Again, I have a long memory about these things. See, I remember Oscar Grant. I remember Hamidou Diallo. I remember the cases where we had what's his name? The kid laying on the ground in California and their subway station got shot in the back. Grant is his name. And Adolph Grimes. I remember these cases. Now, there is a difference between, and our media has blurred this line very clearly. There's a big difference between those cases, a guy getting shot 50 times, a kid being handcuffed on his back, on the ground, on his stomach, on the ground, shot in the back. There's a big difference between bad cops doing stupid things like that and Michaela Bryant and a guy protecting someone's life. We have blurred that line and we have thrown it out the window, and we demonize cops more than we praise them. And they are living with that stigma. They're living with that fear. I do not want to ever have to be in that scenario where there is a mass shooting going on and I have to decide, what am I going to do? By the way, I live in Binghamton, New York. We've had a mass shooting here before.
And bomb threats.
We have lots of bomb threats, but we've had a literal mass shooting here in Binghamton, New York, which, by the way, didn't involve long guns. It was handguns.
Yep.
And 9 people died.
And most of your mass shootings do involve handguns.
Yeah, well over 65% of them. But I can tell you, in that scenario, they didn't rush in either. And most of it, even though the training has been changing over the last several years, saying go in, go in, go in, the actual real world experiences, they rarely ever go straight in.
They want to assess what's going on first.
They wait, they assess, they gather their people, and then they make an action. Usually it doesn't take an hour. Usually it doesn't take half an hour. But that is the real world. And it's because our media is so extreme that we have such incredibly lofty expectations of our police. And we have a media so ready to demonize them, to say, this is why we need to defund the police. This is why we have to take $100 million from the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to fund social workers instead of police officers, because they're going to point to Uvalde as the answer. And we've seen that defunding the police, hiring social workers has not worked. That social experiment has failed everywhere it has been done. And yet we're going to do it again, because the answer is all police.
It wasn't done right the last time.
Yeah, it wasn't. They're all incompetent. We have a better plan. We're going to do this. And that's the problem I have. And yes, I will defend the police to an extent. Yes, they failed. Yes, we can learn from this experience.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I have to understand that our rage has been magnified because the media has been looking for this so that they can justify, see, now we need social workers. Here it is, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. We're going to give $100 million to social workers, and that's going to fail even more.
Yes, the knee-jerk reaction of these bills being pushed out to calm the population down and take more control do not work. Us forgetting we didn't learn anything from Sandy Hook. I mean, we learned something from Columbine for a couple of years. I remember having school resource officers. Now half of them are gone. Again, we're going to demonize the police because their training and their bureaucracy failed them. I'm sure every last one of those men wanted to jump into that room, use the hologen that they had on scene to open that door, or just maybe jiggle the handle. They wanted to.
Yeah,
I'm sure they
because
did.
doors
But they've
unlocked.
been cucked so much by the politics and the bureaucracy to not do it that they didn't. And I mean, I pity those guys. They have to be tortured in their soul right now.
Could you
Well, I
imagine?
guarantee-
Could you
guarantee
imagine
that they
having to
are,
live with
but
that?
No,
So-
I couldn't. I don't think I could ever live with that.
we
Watch
need to
out
go
for
ahead and start
switchblades.
wrapping this up. We're at 2.5 hours.
Ah, shit, we're just getting started. Come on, Mike.
Well, can I ask you guys a question? Vasquez, you just mentioned a couple of older such scenarios where police officers killed people. One question I wanted to ask. I remember it got a lot of attention. And it's a question that I get asked all the time as the founder of a gun rights advocacy organization. BB guns.
Yeah.
Do you remember a few years back? I don't remember if it was like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. A young kid with a CO2 powered pellet gun pistol
Chicago. Yeah.
got shot by a police officer because he was playing with his pistol on a swing set or something.
13-year-old with a BB gun was out with his friends. Police officer confronted him. He ran away. As he was running away, he was shot in the back 3 times, as I recall. It was in Chicago. Yeah, I remember it.
So one of the things that I'd like to touch on with our next NFC stream, the BB guns. All right. We are not teaching our kids gun safety. We're not teaching our kids guns at all. When I was in school, we had BB guns. Our gym teacher brought BB guns in, and we would shoot BB guns in gym class. In my senior year, our shop teacher brought in a couple of 410 shotguns and a 22 and took us out to the soccer field and set up a bunch of targets. And he taught us how to handle a gun, taught us to never turn a gun loaded or unloaded on a crowd or on people. And what I told somebody today, when I got asked this question today, or maybe it was yesterday, doesn't matter. The kids of today, the only gun education that they are getting is from TV and video games. They're literally learning that guns are fun to run around with and kill people in shooter games. All right. And I'm not blaming the video games because it's a leisure, it's fun, whatever. What I am blaming is the lack of parental involvement in educating their children on firearms before exposing them to violent games and TV shows. The education system for not teaching them about firearms and not doing this. Because I get a lot of people, and I had one ask me this question yesterday or today, how I feel on, and I didn't know they were making them this powerful, but apparently you can buy competition air rifles now in 22 caliber that do more damage than a 22 rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I haven't followed air guns and BB guns for years.
Yeah, there's some of those air guns that are shooting at like 2,500 feet per second.
I looked at one yesterday that's 2,460 feet per second, and it looks like a 300 Win Mag.
Yeah.
All right. I don't disagree that air guns can look like a real gun. And I get a lot of people that say you can go into Walmart and buy a BB pistol and walk in and rob a store because it looks like a 45.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the problem I have with that is lack of education. All right.
Well,
granted, you got idiots that go buy a BB gun and try to rob a store. But what I'm talking about is these kids that get these BB guns and run around with them, playing with them, not respecting them as a gun.
Well, it's a subset of a bigger problem, and you left out music videos, rap videos, which glorify violence and crime, which is a big problem since 1992 that I am totally against. I can't stand modern rap at all because it's useless. overwhelmingly useless. I don't care if people like it. It's devoid of substance, and it pushes crime, violence against women. It's deplorable.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a subset of a bigger problem, which is, and the bigger problem is, we are a nation founded on having a gun culture as a means of protection at every level of life. And we still have the guns, but we're getting rid of the culture. And the culture includes being knowledgeable about the function and use and proper care of a firearm. And in that, the proper care of other human beings. We have dehumanized ourselves to a massive extent in the last 50 years. And that has coincided directly with the increase, or not even really increase, but the level and the type of crimes that we're seeing and use of firearms like that. Mass shootings are not new.
I agree. No, I agree with Voss 100%. I mean, we started seeing mass shootings, especially school shootings, what, in the 90s?
No, we've had them since 1942.
Yeah, they've been going on.
Actually, 1947 was the first one in New Jersey.
Okay, but I mean, did you have one or two? I mean, we can go into the data and maybe have a deeper discussion on this, but rehabilitating the culture, bringing back the gun culture, kind of like how it was back with the Boy Scouts, going out in the woods, having a good time while learning survival skills. Same exact thing. One of the things I want to do, especially in Ohio, is bring the gun culture back. I'm thinking through the framework of like a 3-gun competition. There's a lot of people out there who would love to have that type of sport here in the state, and it doesn't exist. And that will help to influence the 2A gun culture, so that so that parents can be comfortable learning guns and teaching their children about firearms when they're young, because now they are too afraid to. They're too afraid to learn to a certain extent, and they're definitely too afraid to teach their kids. And there's no programs for it.
That a lot of people will know this name just as soon as I say it. Dick Heller, through his Heller Foundation, is working to bring shooting sports back into schools. So that is actually a very good organization if you support gun
Heller
rights.
Foundation?
It needs to
support is the Heller Foundation. I mean, that is their purpose. That is their goal, is to bring shooting sports back into the schools.
I think it would be extremely beneficial. And I think it's very important, if we're going to make any headway with saving and protecting the Second Amendment, that the newer generations are educated on what it means and educated on proper firearm safety procedures, handling, cleaning, everything.
Well, again, this is intentional. What's going on with the separating us from our history?
Yep. Well, the second question,
so that they can justify taking away. Okay, it gets a huge component of it gets the younger generation set up and indoctrinated to urge for these measures.
The second question. This is a question I got asked today that I have a really hard time answering. Because I don't know how I feel about it. I know how I feel about it, but I don't know how to express how I feel about it. So it was today that I got asked that question about BB guns, because it was the same guy asked me 2 questions in one sentence. Removing God and guns from school. He asked me if, as an organization, if I represented and supported the removal of God or Christianity or Jesus Christ or any of that type of stuff from schools. My answer has always been that I think removal of God and guns from school has been pretty much the most destructive thing in our society. because it removed all of our fundamental beliefs. It removed all of our educational purposes on firearms. But the God situation is really hard for me to argue on. I don't know
Well,
how to answer it.
well,
Oh, I mean,
go ahead, Alex.
the separation of church and state doctrine argument that's been given has been that the government needs to separate, has to be secular from religion. That's not what the intent of the founders was. It's that the nation, the federal government, wouldn't decide on a religion that would be a state religion, but should not infringe on other religions. So if a school, this is a problem with the Department of Education centralizing everything, if a school wants to have prayer, if it wants to be religious and still be publicly funded, the Supreme Court just came out and said, yes, you can get public funding for religious schools. So it's a market decision as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we've always had this, and there are Catholic schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools.
Yep.
Religion in schools exists. It has been minimized because in the culture, we have minimized that. We demonize Catholics and Christians. We emphasize other religions that I can't mention, otherwise we'll be called all kinds of names. Because that is a political, again, we've politicized religion. But what we're looking at is the tenets that our nation is built upon are tenets that are religious in nature. And that is not a bad thing. Again, it's like with guns. If you make someone aware of it, you give them the information, you educate them, they then take that education and they apply it to their lives individually. So if a school chooses and says, we want to present X religion or a multiple of religions, I'm not against that, because that's their choice. And kids can then take that information, as long as it's not set in a format that is indoctrinating, as in isolating and putting one religion above another religion or demonizing any class.
Oh, absolutely.
Then I'm perfectly fine. They should, and I'm happy to see that, or even to express that here are the tenets that created this nation, and we cannot talk about our creation of this nation without identifying the Judeo-Christian values that were at the bedrock of everything that we did. It has to be there. And then comes the question, well, what are Judeo-Christian values, which happen to also involve Islamic values? Pretty much 80% of the world have the same values that come from the same core. There's nothing wrong with saying, here's the core tenets that every religion says, thou shalt not kill. Every religion believes in that. Every religion says, thou shalt not steal. Well, not in those words, but that you should not steal, that stealing is bad. Coveting someone else's property, including other people's wives. This is important. Now, when you say, I'm doing this as a public school, the answer should be, we can discuss the core tenets as an aspect of history without saying that it's good or bad. And in the same way that we would say, here's how this is the minimum safety standards and respect we should have for a firearm. You can do that. And if you as an individual want to take that up and go further, go to your religious institution and go and do whatever you want. You're an individual. You're a United States citizen. That's your right. That's your freedom of religion and expression. Run with it. Where the schools aren't there to tell you what to believe or how to feel or to place anyone above you. They are there to give you the core understandings so that you can critically evaluate the information and make a decision for yourself. As long as we do that, we're doing what schools are meant to be doing. The second we get away from that, and we are far, far away from that.
Oh, yes.
We're screwed up. And that's when everything else falls apart. Does that make sense? Does that answer it?
Actually, I believe that our students should be introduced to all religions. Okay.
I don't disagree with that.
Every
I agree with that too.
because not only one of the things that will happen with that is we will become more, I don't want to necessarily say accepting, more tolerant of other religions.
More homogenized.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily homogenized, but when it's like with everything
We'll
else.
be more understanding.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, that's a better word.
When I
We'll be
was in
more
school,
understanding of the other religions, so we won't be as prejudicial against them.
right? When I was in school, and I remember, we had all kinds of posters up about, the like Psalms readings. Our math teacher had a crucifixion hanging above her desk. We had Christianity in school, but our social studies teacher taught us about all kinds of different faiths all around the world, different religions. We learned about the Islamic State and all that type of stuff in school. But we didn't pray or any of that. And I'm sure throughout history, teachers and students prayed. But we didn't really get Christianity shoved down our throats. And not every teacher had stuff about Christ or God in their classroom. But they had the freedom to do so. And we were educated on religions around the world. So when I meet people that are Buddhist, I find it interesting, and I talk to them and tell them what I know and ask them questions about it. I'm not offended by them. But when this guy asked me this question today about the gods and guns being removed from school, he kind of caught me off guard, choked me up a second, because I was absolutely in agreement that removing education of firearms from school was absolutely absurd. But I didn't understand how to answer. I didn't comprehend how to answer that thing about religion effectively. He made the statement. He made the statement, and I don't remember if I've heard it from one of you guys before, but he made the statement about the Judaeus foundation of our framework. He said, you consider, throughout history, you consider the Judaeus beliefs in the frameworks of the Constitution, and the Second Amendment protects the Constitution. Those are the two biggest things that you need to remember about the Constitution. And the moment you start removing parts of the foundation, the walls start to collapse.
The way it was created does not require our Constitution, and our amendments do not require a Christian or Judeo-Christian belief.
No, they don't.
But they do incorporate the core of those beliefs, which are beliefs that are shared in every religion, whether you're talking about Tanto or Buddhism, you're talking about most of the Islamic faiths, not all of them, most of them. When you're talking about all the different beliefs, Shinto, they all have the same core tenets that are at the core. And that's why our founders were so brilliant. I mean, there were atheists that were involved in the process, as well as several different religions. And
there were agnostics too.
Yeah. And they ran through and they said, okay, we all agree, as an example, defending yourself is something you should be able to do. We all agree that murder is bad. We all agree that we should have freedom of religion to express the faiths that we do or do not have. So they spent the time to really burn down, go, what's at the core of this? Does anyone disagree with murder is bad? That we should be able to defend ourselves when we are being assaulted, and we should have the means to be able to defend ourselves and our families and our property. That our government should never have the ability to micromanage our lives in any aspect of our life. And that's the thing that we should be able to, we should have that discussion in every school. Just like we should say, every school should say, and this is what a gun, And this is why you should respect that gun. I remember back when, and I'll be real quick because I'm coming up right on the end here, and I'm getting tired too. I remember now I'm 54. So we're going back decades here. Mike, you'll probably remember this, even though you're younger than me.
No, actually, we're the same age.
I know. I'm trying to give you a compliment, man. Back in...
I feel 54.
Wait.
You're a young buck.
Yeah. But we were in junior high school, and they had a demonstration. The police came on by. They had a watermelon in the middle of the street, and they said, this is why you do not run between cars into traffic. And they had everyone standing back. They didn't have to close off the streets back in the 70s. It was like 70s, early 80s. They didn't actually close the street. They just made sure no cars coming. Okay. And took a patrol car and straight down. I think he was doing 50, 60 miles an hour right into that watermelon. And we watched that thing go. This is in the Bronx. This was in the Bronx. And we got to see it splatter. You know, this is why you do not run between cars if they're trying to cross the street. Highly effective, and I'm sure it saved lives because we went, oh, yeah, that would be bad. Even in junior high school, might have been elementary school, the impact, we got it. It made perfect sense. Why can't we do that with guns? Again, once we give people the core understanding, then people can say, okay, I get it. I know why I have to respect that. I understand why that's important. And now it's on you to take it further. Same thing with guns, same thing with religion.
We did actually a very similar thing, but it was with guns. Okay, when we went through our hunter safety courses, we got shown exactly what guns do. Same scenario, watermelon put out there, shot with a shotgun, shot with a 22, shot with a 306 or a 30-06. We were shown, okay, guns kill, guns blow things apart. Okay. And that's what they do. That's their purpose.
I tell you what, I wish more of my friends had gotten that kind of lesson. See, when I grew up in the Bronx, 80s, lots of crack all over the place, a lot of drugs. A lot of my friends that I grew up with were involved in crime. And I can tell you, I lost 25% of the people I went to kindergarten with were dead by the time I hit 18. I remember several of my very good friends that I grew up with used to knock on my door, come on out and play. Died in drug deals, through a bulletproof vest, point blank range. And this is how we learned. Yeah, do I know guns are deadly? Sure. 25% of my friends died. Now, did they die because guns are deadly? No. They died because they were involved in drugs, they were in crime, and they didn't have respect for themselves, for God, for their for the weapons that they were using, or the crimes they were committing. They had no respect for anything. That's why they died. Not because of the gun. The gun is just the means. But you know, I know they died from being stabbed in jail. They got killed because they OD'd on drugs. There's a lot of things that kill people.
Did you guys?
Is important. Go ahead.
Your hunter safety course. Was your guys involved with the school at all?
Yeah, mine was in school.
Yeah,
They didn't have that.
I took my hunter safety course in school in my senior year.
Mine was 8th grade.
But you guys are both ex-Marines, so I'm sure you've been in situations, you know, with firearms and enemy soldiers and stuff. But have either of you ever been in a situation or a scenario in civilian life where you've had another civilian pull a gun on you?
Oh yeah.
No.
Oh yeah. Had a crackhead standing half a foot away from me, square, snub nose 38, pointing straight.
That was mine too.
My chest, straight into the middle of my chest, looking me square in the eyes. And you know why he did it? I was coming home. This is back when I was a stockbroker. I was coming home to the Bronx. I had gone out, got a drink. I was coming home. I saw him. He was sketchy. I knew he was a sketchy guy. Didn't know he was a crackhead at the time. I'm like, okay. But, I'm good. I was prepared. Or at least I thought I was. As we were passing each other, he grabs me from just behind my vision, grabs me behind the arm. So I turn around because something stupid's about to happen.
Yep.
And I turn around, and his other hand had the gun square at my chest and goes, so obviously I stopped instantly, and he's not shaking. He's not pointing it at my head. He's looking me dead in the eyes. This is a man who's killed people before. These are the telltale signs.
Yep.
He knew exactly what he was doing. And he said, I want you to know, you should be more prepared. You should be paying attention more. Now, literally, we had a conversation for like 10 minutes of him trying to tell me I should need to be more aware of my surroundings and I should watch out because someone could hurt me as he's got the gun on me just to make his. And I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, he doesn't know that in my head, I'm running through every scenario I can get through.
Yeah.
Trying to stay as calm. I'm raging.
Yep.
And trying to stay as calm as I can because I realize not only can this caliber kill me, but this man has the intent and the capability to do so. And I cannot get out of this scenario. The best thing I could do in that scenario, yes, sir, I understand. No, I will take that under advisement. I'm going to pay attention in the future. Thank you for making me informed about this. It's a valuable lesson. Anything and everything I could say to make sure that this guy was happy with what was being said. And then he went off. There's more to the story. I won't say it publicly. Stuff happens.
I had,
yeah.
I was 18 years old. I was living with my cousin in Philadelphia. And we were in I don't know what they call them, but it's an apartment building where it's like small studio apartments, and there was like 20 of them on a floor, and there was like shared laundry rooms and bathrooms and stuff. And we were right near like the central red brick area where the roads are all red brick and they have like the carnival and stuff set up all the time. A lot of meth, a lot of crack, real kind of bad place to be. There was a gas station right next to the apartment, and I went to get some cigarettes. I walked into the store to get cigarettes. As I was walking in, there was these two younger kids, maybe 16, maybe 17, definitely just under 18 because they had like little mustaches and shit. And they were trying to get people to buy them cigarettes. So I know they were under 18. This older guy walked in the store in front of me, and he went in and he got cigarettes and a couple other things. And I was in line behind him, and he walked out the door, and I noticed them kind of follow behind him a little bit. And he went off to the left towards where he had parked, where there's cameras everywhere. So I kind of got a little uneasy, and I'm like, okay, these kids are obviously up to something. I'm 18, I'm young. I didn't really think nothing of it. I'll beat their ass, no big deal. I grabbed my pack of Marlboro Reds and my Mountain Dew and my bag of Doritos. I walk out the door. I turn to the right because our apartment building is on the right. Well, there's an alleyway between the store and the apartment building where there's no cameras. And I got to the corner of the building, and out of nowhere got grabbed. Similar scenario. I was just past the corner of the building, right out of my vision. I got grabbed, and when I turned towards what was grabbing me, snub nose 38 right smack in the center of my chest. 18 years old, freaked out. Our social studies teacher was a Marine, and he had left to go across seas a couple different times. he would always teach us, threat identification, threat response, stuff like that. And if you ever do get a gun pulled on you, don't try to play hero, try to defuse the situation, just cooperate with whatever they say.
Yeah.
So that all started pouring through my head. So the kid wanted my pack of cigarettes. The other kid ran away. I'm assuming he was a little younger and didn't realize what was about to go down, because he ran away, took off running out around the back of the store. And I'm shaking now just talking about it. That's how much it freaked me out. I gave him the pack of cigarettes, and I did everything he said, everything he wanted. Told him, hey, you don't got to shoot me. He'd never pulled a gun on anybody, or if he did, he wasn't very strong about it because he was shaking up. The gun was shaking. He was freaking out. I'm not even sure to this day if the gun was loaded, but the old man had called the police. All right. And the entire duration of me standing there with this kid with this gun to my chest was probably 2-3 minutes, maybe 3 minutes tops. And a cop pulled up into the parking lot. This kid choked up, and I felt him push the gun into my chest. And I thought, shit, this is it. And I kind of puffed up waiting for the shot. And then he just turned around and ran. And the kid would have got away if I didn't trip him and stop him. But the whole time he had that gun on me, there's so many people, and this is what I wanted to kind of use this as a reference over the Uvalde thing. There's so many people that have a lot of talk.
Yeah.
I would run right in there and shoot that guy. I would grab the guy's gun out of his hand and shoot him with it if somebody pulled a gun on me. Nobody knows. And this is why I was happy that you said you hope you never have to be partaking in a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what goes through your mind or through their heads in these scenarios if you've never been in it before. And I'm a badass. I'm real cocky, real mouthy. I'll stand here and fist fight anybody all day long. But when that kid pulled a gun on me and put it in my chest, I was the world's biggest coward. I was scared for my life. And I was, here you go. Yes, sir. No problem. It's okay. You don't have to do this. Take the cigarettes.
It's a smart thing to do.
It's scary. It is. And it's, like I said, he was 15, 16 years old. They arrested him, and I don't know whatever came of it. And I don't know if the gun was even loaded, but the gun being loaded was the last thing on my mind.
Well, you always assume it is.
I was taught by our social studies teacher, Mr. Van Buskirk. He always taught us about war and everything because he was a Marine, active duty Marine, or whatever. I don't know how he juggled teaching and being a Marine.
Reserve. He was in the reserve.
But he told us in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade when we had him for social studies, if you ever have a knife pulled on you, this is how you defend yourself. If you ever have a gun pulled on you, you don't defend yourself. You do what you're told. You cooperate. You don't argue. You don't make them feel uncomfortable. You don't yell at them. You don't act irrational. And it's scary. It's hard. It really is. And I don't know. I just wanted to ask you that because when we were talking about what goes through these people's minds in certain scenarios and stuff, and that's something that's going to haunt me probably for the rest of my life. And I hope I never have a gun pulled on me again in that type of event. But people ask you, what would you do in that situation? You don't know. You cannot answer that honestly.
No.
Well, I can't say that it would wind up the same way the second time.
Nope.
But that's, again, it also, the difference between the two stories that people should take away from this is we both wound up doing a very similar thing. One of the key differences is at the time, this is me after I was in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
It was me with greater knowledge about the firearms, having lived in an environment where people have been shot before, where people died from early ages in my life all the way through, and my thought was, okay, I'm getting through this scenario so that I could get to the next stage. And depending on how this goes, there's a couple of different ways it goes. That's the military mindset.
Right.
Also buoyed by the core understanding that, no, this ain't a Hollywood movie. You're not grabbing this gun. Understand who you're dealing with. This isn't and honestly, your situation was more dangerous than mine. The kid's scared.
Yeah.
I have a stone cold killer. The killer is not going to accidentally kill me. He will do it on purpose, and he and I will both know a moment before he pulls the trigger that I did something that caused him to shoot. Because he didn't really shoot me. So he wanted to tell me something. Here's my window there. Someone who's scared, you don't know what they're going to do. When he pushed on you, he could have accidentally pulled the trigger. He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
That got more dangerous. Even more of a reason why got to stay calm. Got to work with them. If I have to give someone advice about, God forbid, someone just pulls a gun on you out of the blue, you're not going to be Rocky. You're not Schwarzenegger. This ain't a movie.
Nope.
Think. The biggest thing you can do is think. Think your way through, stay calm, keep that other person calm, and work your way out of it.
Exactly.
It doesn't always work, but it can help. So that's some public service advice there. But it is late, and it's been a full day. I've been up since 7 this morning.
I've been up since 6.
I got you both beat. 4:30.
I didn't even realize you were still here.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up.
Yeah, the young
as always, we ask that you like, share, and share. Subscribe to our YouTube feeds. Visit us on Facebook. Join our Facebook group, Liberty First Foundation. Like our page, Liberty First Foundation.
Subscribe.
Absolutely.
Subscribe and turn on those alerts. Find out when we're going live. And also take time to visit our website at l1f.us. We're actually getting ready to start doing some pretty exciting things on there. So make sure to go check it out. Okay. And keep an eye on it. Check in for updates.
It was great talking to you. One last thing, never forgive, never forget, and let's hold the line, huh?
You got it, Alex.
Amen.
All right, Mike, and Zach, pleasure to meet you. Hopefully we'll work together soon.
Yep. Have a good night.
All right, Alex.
Have a great night,
gentlemen. Good night, guys.
Bye.